Chapter 1525. It's a pity that this art is only in Tao spirit realm. If it could reach the level of an art that can affect the Tao paragons in the seventh layer of sky beyond the sky, then the terror of this person would reach a terrifying state. The red-robed man shook his head. At that moment, in the sky above the rune formed by the 12 great sect elders in the seventh layer of sky beyond the sky, there was a small area that no one could notice. It was only the size of a fingernail, and it looked as if it was about to turn into snowflakes. Su Ming stood on the feng shui compass and slowly lowered his head. With a swing of his right hand, the snowflakes in the sixth layer of sky beyond the sky disappeared without a trace. Even the feng shui compass where he stood no longer had a hint of cold. But for some unknown reason, Su Ming gave off a feeling as if he had fused with the night sky as he stood there. It was as if he was the night sky. The power of this art is pretty good. Su Ming closed his eyes. After some time, when he reopened them, he pushed his right hand against the feng shui compass beneath him. 16th formation. He cleared the rune for 1 day and 1 night. The disciples of Seven Moons sect had their eyes on him, and that day and night belonged to Su Ming. He had started from the first formation, and by then, he had cleared 15 formations. This scene had completely shocked the disciples of Seven Moons sect, and all the mocking gazes directed at him previously crumbled. The only thing left behind was shock. His clearing of the rune had already attracted the attention of the sect elders in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. Even Lan Lan had walked out of the palace where she meditated and looked towards Su Ming. It had been a very long time since anyone had managed to clear 15 formations in one go. Something similar had only happened during a certain period of time in the past. However, most of the people from that period of time had already disappeared. The only ones remaining were the people from the 5th level of the sky beyond heaven. Shadow of Autumn. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. At the instant the runes started rotating with a bang, he lifted his right hand and swung it in the direction of the sky. With it, the feng shui compass rotated, and the sky instantly turned from black to red. That red replaced the dark night, causing the sky to look as if it was burning red. This was not fire, but the color of autumn. It was as if blood had dyed the sky red, and a faint feeling of withering came with it, causing Su Ming to feel as if his life force was gradually withering away. At the same time, the feng shui compass seemed to have transformed into a huge tree. Its leaves fell off one by one. There was no wind, but each and every one of those leaves represented life force. As they fell, it was as if nothing could be changed in this season, and they were heading toward death. Su Ming fell silent. At that moment, it was as if he had turned into the tree. The falling leaves not only contained his life force, they also contained his memories. They contained everything in his life. The art of autumn's shadow. Su Ming mumbled softly to himself. But the autumn that I like isn't the shadow of the setting sun, but the silent withering in the night. That's what I want, the shadow of autumn in the sky. At the instant a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. Understanding appeared in them. Immediately, the red sky was dyed by black and turned purple. That purple became darker until it turned black again. The autumn tree that Su Ming had manifested was also enveloped by black, as if it was hidden in the night. No one could see the falling leaves, but soon all the plants and trees on the mountains from the 1st to the 6th layers of sky beyond the sky in Seven Moons sect withered at the same time. It was as if their withering had happened in an instant, and it was so fast that no one had noticed it in the span of a breath. It was unlike the autumn leaves drifting slowly under the setting sun. Autumn in the night changed in an instant. The night was eternal, and the illusory tree disappeared. Su Ming stood there with his purple hair fluttering in the wind. His eyes, which had been shut at some point in time, opened to reveal the darkness in his pupils that could not be tainted by the night. The 17th formation. At the instant Su Ming said those words, Seven Moons sect, which had been silent for a long time, burst into an uproar that shook the sky and earth. Sect Elder Wang cleared the 16th formation. This means that he has already reached the same height as eldest senior sister Yu Yan. That's not the main point. Sect Elder Wang's epiphany is clearly different from the others. The snow before and the black light now give people a feeling as if they're in the middle of night. That feeling is very ghastly, and it makes people shiver even though it's not cold. If he can clear the 17th formation, then it means that he has surpassed eldest senior sister Yu Yan and reached the number of formations senior brother Chun Tao has reached. Eldest senior brother Fei Feng is the only one in front of him. Discussions rose everywhere, but there were also some who spoke words that were not quite in line with the crowd's expectations due to jealousy and envy. He has clearly reached his limit. The 17th formation might be his limit. Even if the 17th formation isn't his limit, it's impossible for this person to surpass eldest senior brother Fei Feng. Eldest senior brother stopped at the 20th formation, and he's already someone we look up to. This person can't do it. Most of these voices came from the disciples from the first mountain range. They did not want to see Su Ming surpass Fei Feng, even if Su Ming was a sect elder. As their voices echoed in the air, the feng shui compass under Su Ming activated the 17th formation. The rumbling sounds of it rotating drowned out all the discussions in the area, causing the people to gradually stop talking. Instead, with different expressions, they looked at Su Ming. This should be the shadow of summer. When Su Ming said those words faintly, the 17th formation's rotation stirred up a sea of fire in the night sky. It formed a huge sun, but did not hang high in the sky. Instead, it enveloped the feng shui compass and Su Ming within it. From the distance, the sky was still dark, but in Seven Moons Sect, there was a sun of fire in the darkness. It was the meridian of summer's sky, and it was also the summer that required the 17th formation to be understood. 2 hours later, the flames turned black. The piercing sun of fire also turned black. There was a powerful burning quality to it, as if it was burning light and exuding darkness. It fused with the night, and its light shot through the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky. When the sun of fire disappeared and Su Ming's figure was clearly revealed on the feng shui compass, his voice was as calm as ever. It echoed in Seven Moons Sect, the 18th formation. At that moment, Su Ming had already surpassed Yu Yan and reached the same number of formations as Chun Tao, but this was clearly not Su Ming's limit. He wanted to surpass the 17th formation and move towards the 18th formation. Winter, autumn, summer, spring. I have never understood this spring when I was in harmonious Morris Alba. Right now, I have also reached a state where I can understand it. My life matrix will also be completed at this moment. My 4 shadows of heaven will also appear. A sparkle that had not appeared for a long time appeared on Su Ming's face. At that moment, he sucked in a deep breath. At the instant the feng shui compass rotated with loud rumbles and the will to revive all manner of things appeared. He sat down cross-legged on the feng shui compass. Spring, shadows of heaven. At the instant Su Ming said those words softly, the feng shui compass on which he sat immediately filled with a thick life force. It was so abundant that in the blink of an eye, Su Ming looked slightly younger. All manner of things were reviving. This was spring, and it was filled with life force. This was also spring. This was the first season among the 4 seasons, and it was also the final grid in Su Ming's life matrix. He had been trying to understand this life matrix for a long time, and at that moment he had finally found the signs of spring in the rune. He had paid far too great a price for this epiphany. He had gone through far too much anguish, and he had felt far too much grief. Only then did he understand what spring was. My dark mountain has already become an illusion. My 9th summit has already been buried in the long river of memories. My berserkers have also become a trace. My homeland, my true world, and arid triad expanse cosmos have all become destroyed nothingness. I was born in the expanse cosmos formed by harmonious Morris Alba's wings, but now harmonious Morris Alba is dead, and everything has become a thing of the past. I lost my family, my senior brothers, my elder, and my lover. I lost everything. I lost the bald crane. I lost everything that was the most precious and precious in my life, and it was as if I had lost my soul. I didn't understand spring in the summer of my life matrix. Instead, I returned to the depths of winter. It was the chill of death, the eternal sleep of my soul, and the sorrow I felt when I sank into darkness. The reason why I like the dark night, the reason why I'm willing to sink into the dark night, is because only in the dark night can I melt my sorrow. Only in the dark night can I not see my surroundings, and only in a trance can I imagine every face in my memories. And at this moment, I finally understood why spring was far away from me, why my life matrix was never complete in harmonious Morris Alba's expanse cosmos. Because the true meaning of spring is a cruelty that can only bloom after death. This is spring. I originally thought that all manner of life will be revived because my life matrix is moving from death to life, but in truth, it contains everything. If there is no death, there will be no revival. If there is no aura of death, there will be no life force. This is spring, and my spring will be the life force in darkness. With my life matrix, it will bloom, the shadow of spring. At the instant Su Ming's eyes flew open, he lifted his right hand and swung it forward. With it, the world roared. The darkness from the night descended on the ground and enveloped the feng shui compass, causing the exuberance of spring to be instantly hidden in darkness. No one could see it. My spring will be hidden by darkness. It does not matter whether it is my life force or my revival. It will all be in darkness. Based on my will, I will either wake up or fall asleep, because it does not matter whether it is spring or summer, the red of autumn, or the snow of winter. All of you will be under my night sky. Su Ming stood up swiftly. At the instant he did so, his shadow that had fused with the darkness distorted. At the same time, besides the two shadow figures from before, 4 more indistinct figures appeared around him. They were the 4 shadows of spring, summer, autumn, and winter. I won't challenge the 19th formation. When Su Ming stood up, his words traveled through 7 Moon's sect. He flew up from the feng shui compass and charged towards the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. Behind him, the night disappeared and dawn broke. A new day arrived. Tomorrow is Monday, and Tuesday will be the 4th day of the month again. It's fine if I'm tired. I can use time to make up for my broken hands, but I believe that the fellow Taoists who have seen it when they pass by will definitely have more. How should I fight for you to give it to me? Tell me. Chapter 1526. Su Ming left behind all of 7 Moon's sect in silence. His figure seemed to have turned into a fleeting sight before the morning sun. He disappeared from the people's eyes and stepped into the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. Someone clearing the 18th formation from the 1st formation was something rarely seen in the history of 7 Moon's sect. At the very least, most of the 7 Moon's sect disciples had never heard of it. It could be said that the day and 2 nights had been a shock to the disciples of 7 Moon's sect. In the midst of their shock, they firmly remembered Wang Tao's name. As for Yilong, when Su Ming challenged the formations, Su Ming was the leaf and Yilong was the flower. But when Su Ming challenged more than 10 formations, Yilong became the foil that served as Su Ming's foil. Yet now, he did not even have the right to serve as a foil. Chun Tao and Yu Yin stood at the edge of the cliff in the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky. When Su Ming left into the distance, they gradually averted their gazes. He could have continued, Chun Tao said after a long while. Chun Zhao said slowly after a long while. His expression was grave as he looked at Yu Yin next to him. I, Fei Feng, had the right to continue after clearing the 19th formation, but he did not challenge it, Yu Yin said softly. When she turned around, she drifted into the distance. Chun Tao narrowed his eyes on the cliff. After a long while, he swung his arm, turned around, and walked back to his cave abode. Fei Feng had already walked out of his cave abode at the top of the mountain. He stood outside the gate of the 1st line and averted his gaze from the disappearing feng shui compass. A profound smile appeared at the corners of his lips. Looks like you've noticed it as well. I wonder if I'll be able to go further next time, or if you, sect Elder Wang, will gain an epiphany faster. Fei Feng smiled, and a fierce glare appeared in his eyes. When dawn arrived and sunlight scattered on the ground, a new day arrived in Seven Moons Sect. Su Ming sat outside his house in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky and quietly closed his eyes. The 18th formation was not his limit. If he wanted, he could still clear the 19th formation, the 20th formation, or even more. Based on his level of cultivation, he should be able to clear the 22nd or 23rd formation. But Su Ming did not. Once you reach the 18th level of the rune, you can only clear it if you have a Tao shadow. Even if you manage to clear it, you won't gain any serendipity. It's just an empty title. Only when you form your own Tao shadow will you be able to gain an epiphany from the rune. A dark light shone in Su Ming's eyes. That person called Fei Feng must have noticed this as well. That's why he didn't continue after passing the 19th formation. Clearly, he hasn't formed his Tao shadow yet. In Seven Moons Sect's Tao shadow requires the fusion of Seven Lives art. In silence, Su Ming closed his eyes. What he wanted to do next was to enter isolation for a long period of time. During it, he would fuse his human, earth, sky, and seven shadows together in an attempt to turn them into a Tao shadow. He wanted to see whether he could use it to reach a breakthrough in his level of cultivation and step into Tao's spirit realm. In the blink of an eye, another 10 years went by. During them, Su Ming meditated and did not open his eyes. He was immersed in the fusion of his human, earth, and human shadows. He did not bother about anything else around him and searched for a chance to fuse them together while he gained an epiphany. During the 10 years Su Ming was in isolation, some minor incidents happened in Seven Moons Sect, such as some disciples going missing for no reason, and signs of the sky shattering would occasionally appear in the sky beyond Seven Moons Sect. It might have soon returned to normal, but it still gradually caught the attention of the people. When another 10 years passed, more signs of the sky shattering beyond Seven Moons Sect appeared. Gradually, they looked as if they were about to connect with each other to form cracks. There were also faint booming sounds that rose and fell and echoed in the air. In fact, it even affected the cultivation of the outer sect disciples in Seven Moons Sect. At that moment, with sect elder Mu Zhan in the lead, he led the disciples in the sect out of sky beyond the sky to investigate the matter. No one knew whether he had discovered something, but when he returned, he went to the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky and did not venture out again. Another 10 years passed. The sky beyond Seven Moons Sect was filled with cracks. In fact, countless cracks had appeared on the ground, in some of the places where Seven Moons Sect was located. In fact, the mountain surrounding the sect also gradually cracked, and this matter caught the attention of the disciples in Seven Moons Sect. Finally, when another 10 years passed, the cracks in the world beyond Seven Moons Sect were so numerous that all those who saw them would feel their hearts tremble. In fact, the mountain gate and the mountains around Seven Moons Sect were also covered in cracks, as if Seven Moons Sect was about to collapse at any moment. The first layer was not the only one affected. Even the second layer of sky beyond the sky had similar cracks. Then, in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky, the Council of Seven Moons of Sect Elders was held. The Council of Elders, named after Seven Moons, was a major event that required all the sect elders to participate in, and as a sect elder, Su Ming naturally had to attend it. Su Ming had been in isolation for 40 years, and during them, he had not opened his eyes even once. Even now, the Council of Seven Moons of Sect Elders, which was the first in 40 years, had sent a jade slip to all the sect elders in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. At that moment, when the jade slip floated in front of him, Su Ming still had his eyes closed, but a shadow seemed to have overlapped with his body. Soon after, a figure stood up from where he had been meditating. It was a shadow of Su Ming, and it looked exactly the same as him. At that moment, when it stood up, it took the jade slip floating in front of it, and with a calm expression, it walked towards the mountain of the 13th line. Since Dao Han belonged to the 13th line, when he was in charge of the sect, the 13th line was supreme. Su Ming was the last to arrive. At the instant he stepped into the 13th line, he saw several divine senses sweeping towards him from the mountain range. There was an observant look in those divine senses, but Su Ming's expression remained the same. With a step, he walked to the top of the mountain and stepped into the Council of Elders of the 13th line. It was a region that looked like a square. It was built at the top of the 13th line and above the clouds. There were 15 huge chairs surrounding the area, forming a ring. There were 15 chairs, and one of them was slightly larger than the others. The remaining 14 were slightly smaller to show the difference in their statuses. At that moment, besides the largest chair, 13 people had already walked down from the other 14 chairs. The remaining one clearly belonged to Su Ming. When Su Ming walked in, 8 pairs of eyes instantly looked towards him in the silent meeting hall. Su Ming had seen them the first time he stepped into Seven Moons sect. One of them was Mu Jun, and the other was Lan Lan. Su Ming's expression remained the same. He ignored those gazes and walked to the empty chair. He slowly sat down and closed his eyes as if he was resting. Soon after, a vast, mighty pressure descended on the meeting hall. At the instant Su Ming opened his eyes slightly, he saw a fiery red figure appear on the largest chair. The fiery red light gradually turned into a long robe, and it turned into a middle-aged man. The man's expression was cold. In his right hand was a pearl, and there was an awe-inspiring expression on his face. Once he sat down, he swept his gaze past the 14 people around him. When he saw his disciple, the black-robed young man who was just as cold as him, he nodded slightly. When his gaze fell on Su Ming, it stopped for a moment. I have gathered all of you to join the Council of Elders of Seven Moons sect because the power of the world has become stronger over the past 40 years. There are certain things that you will need to prepare for as soon as possible. Sect Elder Mu, tell us what you discovered when you ventured out 20 years ago, the red-robed man said faintly while spinning the pearl in his hand. My fellow Taoists, 20 years ago, I went out to investigate on the orders of the great sect elder, and when I was in the crack in the world, I discovered traces of one Tao sect. Mu Jun swept his gaze past the crowd and said with a dark expression. At the instant the words one Tao sect tumbled out of Mu Jun's mouth, the expressions of 5 of the 13 sect elders who did not include Dao Han and Mu Jun changed swiftly. It really is one Tao sect. Only the mysterious and unfathomable one Tao sect, which exists in all the cracks in the world, would dare to show themselves so arrogantly outside Seven Moons sect's mountain gate. When cold voices spoke, Mu Jun wrapped his fist in his palm towards the red-robed man and no longer spoke. Since you discovered traces of one Tao sect a long time ago, why did you wait for 20 years? Lan Lan asked faintly and coldly. When she spoke, the people in the area immediately stopped talking and cast their gazes towards the red-robed man. Because one Tao sect formed a crack in the world beyond Seven Moons sect. In truth, they sent a notice, or rather, instead of saying that it was a notice, it would be better to say that it was a threat. The red-robed man toyed with the pearl in his hand. When he spoke calmly, he swept his gaze past Su Ming. Their notice clearly told Seven Moons sect to hand over all the disciples we took in during the past 60 years, or else, once the time limit is up and we don't hand them over, we will launch a war between the two sects. At the instant the red-robed man spoke, the expressions of all the people in the area besides Su Ming changed drastically. One Tao sect is going overboard. What a joke. How can we hand over those disciples? These people are a small matter. But Seven Moons sect is also one of the 7 sections. If we are threatened because of this, how are we supposed to face our fellow sect members in the future? One Tao sect might be the strongest sect among the 7 sects, but they can't be so forceful. Cold chuckles came from the sect elders in the area. At that moment, the red-robed man slowly spoke. Of course, if we agree to their request, one Tao sect will give us compensation, such as the experience of those in the second level of Tao Divinity realm stepping into Tao Spirit realm, and an epiphany to become a great Tao Paragon. Once he said those words, the expressions of all the sect elders in the area changed. As they sank into contemplation, they no longer said a single word. Instead, they sank into silence. Their calmness caused the entire Seven Moons Council of sect elders to instantly fall silent. Today, we will update normally. Tomorrow, we will release 4 chapters. A new climax will rise. Chapter 1527. If that's the case, it's not like I can't agree to it. After all, one Tao sect is indeed incredibly powerful. Legend has it that there is a great Tao paragon guarding it. In fact, I even heard that the ancestor of one Tao sect is one of the 3 great Tao gods. The 3 great Tao gods are just legends. Besides the emperor of ancient Zong, no one has ever seen a second one. But even though it's just a legend, it's impossible for it to be a baseless rumor. Forget about this 9th level Tao god whose existence we don't even know exists. There are less than 38th level Tao paragons in all of ancient Zhang's 7 sects, 12 clans, and the royal capital. Compared to nearly 67th level Tao paragons, the existence of a great Tao paragon is like heaven itself. Great Tao paragon. If the great sect elder of the first line of Seven Moons sect had not been injured in the past, he might have become a great Tao paragon by now. Su Ming did not speak, but when he heard the sighs from the sect elders around him, he understood that there were no great Tao paragons in Seven Moons sect, and there were less than 30 great Tao paragons in ancient Zong. The blue-robe cultivator in the 7th layer of sky beyond the sky is clearly a 7th level Tao paragon. Su Ming fell into deep thought, but he also formed his own judgment regarding one Tao sect, the leader of the 7 sects, asking for the disciples who had lived for the past 60 years. Perhaps what they want is me. A barely noticeable glint shone in Su Ming's eyes. Lan Lan was silent for a moment before she said slowly, "This matter has already surpassed what we sect elders can discuss. I wonder if you have already made your decision, great sect elder Han." She was not the only one who thought of this. In truth, all the sect elders in the area were old monsters who had practiced cultivation for many years. They were full of schemes, and their previous words had been spoken intentionally. They would only affect the situation and not voice their own judgment. The red-robed man was silent for a moment before a fierce glare shone in his eyes. At the instant his gaze appeared, the expressions of the sect elders around him immediately became stern. One Tao sect has already given us the conditions to exchange for our disciples. No matter what, one Tao sect's goal is, it's not impossible, but there are 2 people who put me in a slightly difficult position. One of them is my disciple Yilong. He has extraordinary potential, and after he follows me for some time, he will become a great genius. The second is sect elder Wang Tao, the red-robed man said flatly. Most of the sect elders in the area cast their gazes towards Su Ming. In truth, all of them had thought of this problem before, but this matter involved the sect elders, and Su Ming did not seem to be a good person either. Naturally, no one would say something like this out loud. Su Ming remained as calm as ever. He did not speak. Since that's the case, we cannot compromise in this matter. Besides sect elder Wang, the other 13 sect elders will order you to leave the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. Bring your disciples to guard the 13 directions around Seven Moons sect. The only ones left in the 5th heaven beyond heaven are your fellow sect members from the various lineages. Although they are not elders, their cultivation bases are not bad, and they are enough to guard the place. Notify the disciples of the 4th layer of sky beyond sky to start patrolling the sect. As for the disciples of the 1st layer of sky beyond sky, seal the sect. I will personally take charge and activate the 7 Moons snow array. This is not a child's play. You all better behave yourselves. If he met with danger outside that he could not resist, he should immediately hide inside the formation. As for Sect Elder Wang, since you might be someone one Tao sect needs, that is why you should continue staying in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. Unless it is absolutely necessary, do not go out. Su Ming was momentarily stunned. He lifted his head and cast a deep glance at the red-robed man. In silence, he remembered the person in the sky-blue Taoist robe. When that person saw Su Ming, he had immediately decided to take him in as a disciple and even gave him the status of a sect elder. Right then, under the pressure from one Tao sect, even the red-robed man had made the same decision. No matter what his goal was, Su Ming stood up slowly in silence and wrapped his fist in his palm to bow to the red-robed man. When he saw Su Ming bow to him, the red-robed man's expression remained calm. Not a single hint of change could be detected on his face. He only nodded and swept his gaze past the pearl on his palm. He remembered the conversations the 13 great sect elders had when he returned to the 7th layer of sky beyond the sky. All orders are to be carried out immediately. The red-robed man stood up. When he spoke, he swung his arm, and the door to the meeting hall immediately flew open. The group, including Su Ming, turned into long arcs and flew out. Only the red-robed man and the aloof young man in black robes remained in the hall. Master, I don't understand this. It's unlikely that one Dao sect came for Junior Brother Yulong. There is a high chance that they came for Sect Elder Wang. The young man frowned and looked at the red-robed man. The red-robed man was silent for a moment before he said slowly, I know. Then why? The young man stared at his master and asked with slight worry in his voice. He still remembered what Sect Elder Lon Lon had said about his master's life matrix clashing with Wang Tao's and that he was about to die. This is a decision made by the 13 great sect elders, including me. This person is the most precious person in Seven Moons sect. The red-robed man's expression was as calm as ever. When he spoke, no one could tell whether he was happy or angry. The young man was silent. He sighed in his heart and wrapped his fist in his palm to bow to the red-robed man before leaving respectfully. When he left, the red-robed man stood alone and stared into the distance quietly. Seven Moons sect can die, but we cannot allow anything to happen to this person. These are the words of the great sect elder of the first line. This person is the key for him and the other great sect elders to become great Dao paragons. It is also the key for me to become a Dao paragon. Hope appeared in the red-robed man's eyes. When he turned around, he disappeared from the hall. At that moment, the sect elders in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky, including Su Ming, immediately turned into long arcs and returned to their own mountains to carry out great sect elder Dao Han's orders. As for Su Ming, he returned to the mountain of the 3rd line with Lon Lon. They did not speak to each other, but when the two of them were about to return to their cave abodes, Lon Lan's footsteps came to a halt. Do you want me to tell you the dangers of your divination? I don't believe in fate. Su Ming turned around and walked to the house on the cliff. When he returned to his real body, which was sitting cross-legged, he overlapped with his real body and gradually disappeared. Lon Lon was silent. She turned around and returned to her palace at the top of the mountain. Soon after, as the entire Seven Moons sect roared, snow fell from the sky. Once it covered Seven Moons sect, an ice sun appeared above it. A figure could be seen sitting cross-legged in the cold sun. Naturally, it was the red-robed man. Once he sat down, snowflakes with a grim, murderous air enveloped Seven Moons sect. At the same time, a loud bang shot up from the 1st layer of sky beyond the sky, and the entire outer sect was instantly covered in snow, as if the mountain had been sealed. If anyone cast their gaze over the area, they would find that Seven Moons sect in the basin was already covered in snow. Not a single trace of what was inside could be seen. Soon after, 13 long arcs flew out from the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. They left the mountains and walked out of sky beyond the sky to scatter in 13 directions around Seven Moons sect. Those 13 directions were the regions with the most cracks in the world. A large number of inner sect disciples also went out from the 4th layer of sky beyond the sky to begin patrolling Seven Moons sect in an intense manner. Only Su Ming sat cross-legged outside the house and continued immersing himself in the process of fusing with the 7 shadows. He could already sense the signs of the fusion. Perhaps he just needed a little more time before he could fuse the 7 shadows together and turn them into a Dao shadow that belonged solely to him. Time passed. During the 3 years after Seven Moons sect put up tight defenses, more cracks appeared in the world beyond Seven Moons sect. Then, on a rainy day in summer, while snow was falling in Seven Moons sect, the world outside was raining cats and dogs. A loud sound that sounded like thunder, but was several times stronger than thunder, descended with a bang. As it echoed in the air, the sky beyond 7 moons sect instantly became filled with countless cracks, as if the sky was about to collapse. The cracks formed a huge picture in the sky. That picture looked like the outline of a statue. It was one of the 3 statues of one Tao sect. When the outline of the statue appeared, loud booming sounds came from the ground. Huge ravines rose and fell, as if 7 Moons sect was surrounded by cracks that came from the world. At that moment, an ancient voice suddenly reverberated in the sky. One. That voice only managed to utter one word before astonishing whistles shot out from the ravines on the ground. As the whistles rose and fell, figures shot out in a flash from the cracks. At first glance, they looked as if they had flown out from the ground, but in truth, they had come from the cracks. The figures had cold expressions on their faces, and with grim, killing intent, they charged towards 7 Moons sect. Doubt. When a second voice came from the sky tumbled about. Around a dozen figures instantly descended from the crack that formed the outline of the statue. They exuded an ancient presence, and once they appeared, they charged towards 7 Moons sect. At the same time, the 13 sect elders guarding outside 7 Moons sect opened their eyes simultaneously. In an instant, they disappeared, and when they reappeared, they were already in front of the dozen-something figures. As booming sounds echoed in the air, they blocked their path. Soon after, the 7 Moons snow rune was activated. As snow and wind howled, 7 Moons sect looked as if it no longer existed. It was enveloped by a huge blizzard that shot into the clouds. From the distance, it looked like a dragon of ice and snow roaring at the world. Sect. This was the 3rd word spoken by the voice that echoed in the universe. At the instant it appeared, the space in front of 7 Moons sect was torn apart with a loud bang, revealing a huge ravine that was hundreds of thousands of feet long. It looked as if it had been torn apart by an invisible pair of hands. At the instant it was torn apart, a black wind dragon covered in countless cracks charged towards the ice, snow, and whirlwind with a roar. Hand over all the disciples who have been in the sect for the past 100 years, or else we'll fight. If you want to fight, then we'll fight. A face appeared in the whirlwind at that moment. That face belonged to the red-robed man. I think I've misunderstood. Yesterday, I said that tomorrow is Monday, and on Tuesday, I will release 4 chapters. It should be a misunderstanding. That damn sentence break. My fellow Taoists, please believe me. If my original intention was really to release 4 chapters in 2 consecutive days, I will not shirk my responsibility. Tomorrow, I will release 4 chapters, and in the future, I will try to reduce the number of broken chapters, especially at the end. Chapter 1528. It's still early. Allow me to introduce myself so that you can know the details of the person who killed you, Your Highness. The young man with the dashing eyebrows walked up the stairs with a smile and headed towards Su Ming. I am Tian He, the 7th disciple of one Tao sect's 2nd Tao Eagle. I am currently one Tao sect's envoy of slaughter, and I am in the 2nd level of Tao divinity realm. Speaking of my hometown, it's also ancient Zong. It's not far away from the royal capital, the young man said as he approached Su Ming. Now, I'm done with my introductions. Your Highness, you can die now. A moment ago, there was a smile on the young man's face, but in the next breath, that smile turned into a ferocious one. The killing intent in his eyes burned with excitement. As he spoke, he lifted his right hand and pointed at Su Ming. With it, the world roared. A large number of cracks appeared on the mountain of the 3rd line. Sword shadows manifested in the air in front of the young man. In an instant, there were more than 1 million of them, and they charged towards Su Ming while blotting out the sky and earth. Each sword shadow contained a terrifying power that seemed to be able to tear apart the world. At the instant they charged towards him, Su Ming still did not open his eyes. However, he lifted his hands and formed seal. His long hair immediately floated in the air, and his robes fluttered. A layer of gentle light instantly enveloped his body and turned into a layer of protection. Loud booming sounds shook the sky and earth as they reverberated in the air. The 1,000,000 sword shadows instantly submerged Su Ming. Soon after, as the booming sounds grew stronger, the sword shadows shattered and turned into a layer of crystalline light that scattered in all directions. Su Ming continued sitting cross-legged on the spot with his eyes closed. The protective screen of light around him had become much dimmer, but it did not shatter. Interesting. As expected of the third prince. Could it be that you have some protective, enchanted treasures on you? The young man smiled, but the killing intent in his eyes grew stronger. He took a step forward and instantly closed in on Su Ming. When he lifted his right hand, he placed two of his fingers together to form the tip of a sword. When he sliced through the air, a layer of white flames immediately burned. When they surrounded his fingers, he tapped the screen of light around Su Ming. At the instant he touched it, the screen of light shuddered. Cracking sounds rang out, and cracks immediately appeared. Shatter! At the instant the young man spoke with a cold sneer, the screen of light around Su Ming shattered with a bang and shattered into pieces. When a long, arrogant laugh rang out, the young man with the dashing eyebrows did not stop moving his right hand. Once he destroyed the screen of light, he charged towards the center of Su Ming's brows. "Your Highness, I won't see you out." The young man's laughter was still echoing in the air. At that moment, the person with the most nervous and worried expression in the seventh layer of sky beyond the sky was Su Zhongfan, who was dressed in the sky-blue Taoist robe. He was Su Ming's master. Even though he was only Su Ming's master in name and had forced the title on him, at that moment, his worry was the most sincere. It did not matter whether he was thinking for himself, but at that moment, he was worried about Su Ming. Sect Elder. In his worry, he could clearly see what was happening in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. In truth, all the people in the area could clearly see Su Ming and the young man's figures in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. This person is at the second level of the Tao God realm. This matter is unfair. Su Zhongfan suddenly looked at the first elder of the first line, Gu Tai. Continue watching. Gu Tai's expression was calm, but a brilliant light had already shone in his eyes. When he spoke faintly, the screen of light around Su Ming broke in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. At the instant the young man, with the dashing eyebrows finger was about to touch the center of Su Ming's brows, Su Ming still had his eyes closed. He did not open them, and neither did he dodge. However, overlapping shadows appeared on his body, and a figure instantly shot out. It turned into a long arc and crashed into the young man's incoming finger. Booming sounds reverberated in the air. The young man's finger froze, and he took a few steps back. When he lifted his head, the figure who blocked his finger tumbled backwards and turned into Su Ming, but his face was pale. His body was illusory, and he looked like he was about to disappear at any moment. Clearly, Su Ming's figure had managed to withstand the attack just then with great difficulty. Shadow body. Not bad, not bad. The young man with the dashing eyebrows grinned. He suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was right in front of Su Ming's real body, who had his eyes closed and was meditating. Yet at that moment, Su Ming's shadow body also disappeared and appeared between the young man and Su Ming's real body. Booming sounds shook the sky and earth. As a layer of fog surrounded them, the young man with the dashing eyebrows lifted his right hand and seized the air in the direction of the sky. Sword of Heaven. A huge crack appeared in the sealed fifth layer sky. The moment it appeared, it turned into an irregular sword that looked like a crack. It charged towards the ground and Su Ming. Loud booming sounds spread in all directions, and Su Ming's shadow body was pierced through by the sword. It was reduced to black shards right in front of Su Ming's real body. When they tumbled backwards, they were sucked back into Su Ming's meditating body. At that moment, overlapping shadows appeared on Su Ming's body again. This time it was not just one shadow body, but two. One of them was Su Ming's winter of 4 seasons, the shadow of heaven that had gained an epiphany of winter. Once the two Su Mings appeared, they charged towards a young man with the dashing eyebrows. When they closed in on him in an instant, arrogance appeared in his eyes. He lifted his right foot and stomped on the ground. With a bang, a large amount of cracks appeared under his feet, and the moment they appeared, they immediately turned into distorted swords that charged towards the two Su Ming figures. Child's play. You overestimate yourself. Third Prince, you will not be able to survive this disaster. As he spoke, the young man put his palms together in front of him and pushed them forward. With this push, his hair immediately fluttered in the wind like a violent gust of wind. The mountain under his feet trembled, and the world behind him distorted. Powerful rumbles came from the fifth layer of sky beyond heaven around him. Distorted swords instantly appeared in all directions around him. There seemed to be no end to them, and it was as if the entire space was filled with sword gleams. One sword slash to cut down. Almost at the instant the young man attacked, one of Su Ming's two shadows shot out. With a single move, he turned into a layer of black fog. As it tumbled about, a gigantic black palm manifested within it, and it charged towards the young man. At the same time, Su Ming's other shadow body, the shadow of Winter of Heaven, opened his eyes. Immediately, snow floated down in his world. The entire sky seemed to have darkened, and a snowstorm instantly appeared. At the same time, an eye that was about to open appeared in the sky, causing the entire fifth layer of sky beyond the sky to be enveloped in shadow. Your art isn't bad, but it's a pity that it's too weak. As the young man laughed madly, he parted his arms. The world roared, and countless sword glares instantly charged forward to crash into Su Ming's black fog palm. They tore apart the snowstorm around Su Ming, the snowflakes in the sky, and the eye that was about to open. At that instant, an astonishing bang rang out. In the midst of it, the eye in the sky was torn. The snowflakes in the area crumbled. Su Ming's shadow of Winter of Heaven shattered completely, and the black fog palm was also torn to pieces. They turned into wisps of black threads that tumbled backwards and charged towards Su Ming's real body, who was sitting cross-legged and meditating. All of them were sucked into his body. What other tricks do you have? Third Prince, Seven Moons Sect has the 7 Lives art. Even if I don't count your origin life art, you should still have 3 shadows, right? Only 3/10 of the time it takes for an incense stick to burn his past. Come, I'll play with you. Excitement appeared on the young man's face. He would definitely not act like this when he fought against other people, but when he fought against Su Ming, he liked it. He liked being toyed with, and he liked this feeling. After all, the person in front of him was the royal family of ancient Zong. It was a royal family that was so noble that he could not afford to show even the slightest bit of disrespect towards them. This was the third prince. Just thinking about the chance to torture and kill a member of the royal family made the young man with piercing eyebrows excited, which was why he wanted to continue that excitement. He wanted to make the third prince fear him. He wanted to see that fear. In the midst of his ferociousness and excitement, the young man with piercing eyebrows took a step forward. When he lifted his right hand, he brought it down swiftly. Third prince, why aren't you sending your 3 shadow bodies over for me to kill? Once his voice echoed in the air, overlapping images appeared on Su Ming's body again. His final 3 shadow bodies instantly appeared and turned into the shadows of autumn, summer, and spring that charged towards the young man. When a young man with piercing eyebrows laughed madly, powerful killing intent appeared in Su Zhongfan's eyes in the 7th layer of sky beyond the sky. He glared at the young man with piercing eyebrows in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. Standing before them was the white-robed teenager. There was a smile on his face at that moment, but there was anger in his heart. He was not angry that he had killed him or captured him. Instead, he was angry that he should have been more decisive in killing him. This is his disaster. Continue watching. Gutai said faintly again. When Gutai said those words, the young man with piercing eyebrows' laughter echoed in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. He stared at the 3 shadows that had appeared in a flash when Su Ming's body overlapped with his. When he saw the 3 shadow bodies turn into Su Ming's appearance, the excitement of killing a prince rose within him again. It's time for the game to end. The time it takes for half an incense stick to burn is almost up. The young man with piercing eyebrows smiled. At the instant disdain appeared on his face, he lifted his right hand and pushed it against the ground. With a bang, the entire ground trembled. Even the mountain in the third line looked as if it was about to collapse. In fact, the 13 mountain ranges in the area trembled. Cracks appeared on the ground, and in an instant, they turned into swords that surrounded the young man with piercing eyebrows. At the instant the young man lifted his right hand from the ground, the swords gathered together and turned into a huge sword that was 1,000 feet long. It swung down horizontally and charged toward Su Ming. Booming sounds echoed in the air. The huge sword contained the power of the young man at the peak of the second level of Tao Divinity Realm. It cut through the shadow of autumn, the body of summer, and the mark of spring. At the instant Su Ming's 3 shadow bodies shattered and tumbled back into his real body, the sword closed in on the top of his head. It was about to cut off his origin life with one slash. It is indeed time for the game to end. At that instant, Su Ming opened his eyes while he was meditating. There's still the 4th chapter. The 4th chapter will be released. Fellow Taoist, do you have a monthly ticket? Chapter 1529. A direct battle between 2 great sects erupted at that instant. To many people, this battle was a little abrupt, but usually wars, especially wars between cultivators, happened abruptly. The black wind dragon roared and crashed into the ice, snow, and whirlwind. It let out a loud bang that shook the sky and earth. When the wind dragon crumbled, the endless black wind tumbled backwards and gathered together beyond the ice, snow, and whirlwind to turn into a black-robed old man. The old man held a cane in his hand, and his cultivation base spread out at a monstrous rate. He was a powerful warrior in Tao's spirit realm. Dao Han, why must 7 Moon Sect do this for the disciples who joined the sect within 100 years? I'm just the first batch of people who came. There will be more after me. If you don't hand them over, the only fate awaiting you will be the destruction of your sect. What a joke. The destruction of a sect is incredibly rare in history. If you dare to be the first to do so, forget about whether the other sects and clans will attack. Even the royal family of ancient Zong will not allow this to happen. The red-robed man's face that protruded out of the whirlwind said flatly, Dao Han, you are the one who has practiced cultivation for the shortest amount of time among the 13 great sect elders of 7 Moon Sect. You are known as the prodigy and the future hope of 7 Moon Sect. Have you forgotten that this is the final 3,000 years of the succession of the royal family? During these 3,000 years, the royal family will not participate in all the battles between sects and clans. The black-robed old man laughed loudly. At the instant the red-robed man's expression changed slightly, the black-robed old man rushed into the whirlwind again. At the same time, figures flew out of the cracks in 7 Moon Sect, especially the gigantic ravine that was more than 100,000 feet wide. There were also ferocious-looking war chariots that appeared in large numbers. The area outside 7 Moon Sect was completely surrounded by the cultivators from One Tao Sect. The 13 sect elders from the 13 sects were also fighting to the death against their opponents in the midst of booming sounds. There was no reason for them to fight, only for the sect. When the red-robed man saw that more cultivators had gathered outside 7 Moon Sect, he laughed coldly. With the rune around, he was not worried that the black-robed old man would be able to break it within a short period of time. At that moment, a loud bang shot up into the air. When the black-robed old man retreated again, Dao Han's low voice came from the whirlwind. The coldness of the 7th month is the snow that defies the heavens. This is the season of fire. The shadow of the blazing sun descends, the shadow of the 7th month. As he spoke, the ice, snow, and whirlwind let out a powerful roar. As it spun rapidly, it spread outwards. In an instant, the area it covered surpassed 7 Moon Sect and instantly enveloped the entire area. In the blink of an eye, it covered an area of nearly 1 million feet around 7 Moon Sect. All the cultivators from One Tao Sect were enveloped in the wind and snow. The wind was fierce, and the snow was like sharp blades. As it reverberated through the air, Shrill screams of pain rang out. Seven Moons sect's gate distorted, and the disciples from the second, third, and fourth layers of Seven Moons sect, who had clearly been prepared a long time ago, rushed out. They were completely unharmed in the wind and snow. In fact, their speed had become much faster, and their divine abilities had clearly become stronger. The wind and snow were their protection. While it protected them, it also brought great damage to the people from one Tao sect. It was especially so for the 13 sect elders. Their bodies were instantly covered in snow, in the wind and snow. Their cultivation bases instantly increased exponentially, and a loud bang that shook the sky and earth erupted from them. At the instant the black-robed old man's expression changed, a red-robed figure walked out of the ice and snow in front of him. Naturally, it was the red-robed man, but it was not his real self. His real self was guarding the operation of the rune, and what appeared at that moment was his Tao shadow. Tao shadow. A glint appeared in the black-robed old man's eyes. He took a few steps back in the wind and snow that seemed to be able to blind his eyes. At the instant killing intent appeared in his eyes, Dao Han's Tao shadow walked forward expressionlessly. Perhaps their levels of cultivation were similar, but in the rune, the black-robed old man was at a complete disadvantage. In truth, even without the rune, Dao Han, who had the pearl from his sixth layer of sky beyond the sky, was not someone the black-robed old man could hope to fight against. Even though the amount of time the black-robed old man had spent practicing cultivation surpassed Dao Han by quite a large margin, his potential could not compare to Dao Han, who had been like a prodigy in the past. At the instant the battle between the two sects erupted, above Seven Moons sect was the sky that was swept away by the howling wind and snow. Another world seemed to exist in the right eye of the statue's outline. At that moment, there was a lake in that world. There were endless waves in the lake, and ripples spread out without end. It was raining at that moment. There was a pavilion beside the lake, and there were 3 people standing in it. They stared at the ripples in the lake, which reflected the battle in Seven Moons sect. This battle is something the eldest prince personally ordered us to do. We cannot underestimate Seven Moons sect, one of them said calmly with a rather solemn expression on his face. But I didn't expect that Seven Moons sect would truly fight back regardless of the cost. The other person might also be dressed like a scholar, but the eyebrows on his face that were as sharp as swords gave him a fierce air. This is how it should be. This is a fight for the throne. If Seven Moons sect doesn't know how to seize the chance and hand it over to us, then it would be surprising. The last scholar looked incredibly thin. He held a feather fan in his hand, and when he spoke, he smiled faintly. His eyes looked as if there were stars contained within them, along with wisdom. But Seven Moons sect has indeed activated the Seven Moons Snow Rune, just as Senior Brother Foam predicted. As for the third prince, he has indeed been arranged not to go out. He will stay in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. The scholar with the slightly solemn expression said slowly with a smile on his face. This isn't difficult. Based on Senior Dao Han's personality, it's not difficult to guess that he will choose the Seven Moons Snow Rune from the 7 runes of Seven Moons sect after being pressured for 40 years. As for the third prince, as long as Seven Moons sect doesn't hand him over to us, they will definitely not let him show his face. The scholar with wisdom in his eyes said with the ghost of a smile while swinging his fan. Then, perhaps before the eldest prince arrives, we might have a chance to capture the third prince. Anticipation appeared in the scholar's eyes. Clearly, the identity of the third prince he spoke of had given him an urge at that moment. That urge turned into stimulation, and his cultivation base was released at that moment. It was the power of someone in the 2nd level of Tao Divinity realm. Oh well, based on the eldest prince's calculations, the third prince should be around the 1st level of Tao Divinity realm. It won't be a problem for you to capture him. Right now, I will help you suppress the powerful warriors in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky for a while. As for the great sect elders of Seven Moons sect, there are powerful warriors in the sect restraining them from a distance, so they won't be a problem for you. The only thing you need to pay attention to is that once you enter the Snow Blizzard rune, You must do what I told you previously. Only by doing so will you be able to blend into Seven Moons sect. You must know that your actions are the key to our plan. The people in the periphery are there to help you divert Seven Moons sect's attention. Besides, you only have the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. You must capture this person alive during that time. I won't need the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Half of it will be enough. The man with the dashing eyebrows laughed. At the instant, a brilliant light shone in his eyes. He took a step forward and headed towards the lake outside the hall. His body turned into a long arc and instantly disappeared into the ripples formed by a drop of rain falling into the lake. It was Seven Moons sect. Once the scholar with the dashing eyebrows disappeared, the one with the solemn expression frowned. Junior brother son is a little arrogant. Please don't let any accidents happen to him. If it wasn't because the rune's weakness is that it can at most withstand a person in the second level of Tao Divinity realm, I wouldn't have chosen Junior Brother Sunday. After all, he is the strongest person in the second level of Tao Divinity realm in the sect. Don't worry, based on my calculations, there won't be any problems. I've already calculated everything. The scholar with a wise gaze said slowly at that moment. Wind and snow howled in Seven Moons sect at that moment. When the wind and snow filled the world and enveloped the entire area, a snowflake appeared in the sky. If anyone took a closer look, they would be able to see that the snowflake seemed to have appeared from the right eye of the outline of the statue in the sky. At that moment, when it drifted away, it fused with the snowflakes in the area and became indistinguishable from each other. As it drifted away, it gradually drifted with the wind, and as the sounds of slaughter rang out nonstop in the wind and snow, it fell into Seven Moons sect. It was as if the rune did not obstruct the snowflake in the slightest. It was as if all barriers were pierced through without anyone noticing as the snowflake drifted away in an irregular manner. It fell into the second layer of sky beyond the sky, then the third, the fourth, and in the end, the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. When it drifted down, the snowflake instantly melted and turned into a young man with dashing eyebrows dressed in a scholar's long robe, but he did not immediately take any action. Instead, he closed his eyes and floated in the air, as if he was waiting for something. At the instant his body appeared in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky, a loud bang rang out. An invisible hand appeared in the sky. No one knew how it appeared, but when it pushed down on the ground, the entire fifth layer roared. A huge pressure instantly enveloped the area, causing all the cultivators in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky to feel their hearts tremble. Their bodies instantly stiffened, and they could not move even an inch. Cracks instantly appeared in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. They spread in all directions and sealed off all the regions in the area. The cracks seemed to have found the edge of the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. At that moment, even though the red-robed Daohan and the others immediately noticed it, they could not rush back in time. Even if they did, it was impossible for them to break the seal on the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky within the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Because the person who sealed the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky and suppressed the cultivators in it was a person they could not fight against with their level of cultivation. That person slowly lifted the palm he had placed on the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky in the seventh layer. With a smile, he stared at the 12 aloof great sect elders of Seven Moons sect before him. My fellow Taoists, it has been many years since we last met. How have you been? Great Tao Paragon, Sun Mu. Among the 12 great sect elders was Su Ming's master in Seven Moons sect. He was a middle-aged man dressed in a sky-blue Taoist robe. He stared at the person who was dressed in a plain robe, had a handsome face, and looked like a teenager. It was snowing in the morning, and the children did not need to go to school. I went out for a stroll and took a few pictures of the snow in Peony River. I uploaded them to Prestige. I also uploaded Fong Kanglin and Qing Shui's pictures. As for the bald crane, Su Ming, and Li Qimei's pictures, I had already edited them according to the request. Chapter 1530. The white-robed teenager was a great Tao paragon. There were less than 30 top-class powerful warriors in all of ancient Zong, and he was great Tao paragon Sun Mu. He might have seemed young, but in truth, he had been practicing cultivation for much longer than the great sect elders of Seven Moons Sect. Besides, the great sect elder of the first line in Seven Moons Sect, the others were not as old as him. Su Zhongfan, fellow Taoist Su, it's been many years since we last met. I didn't expect that you would have manifested a great Tao ring here. The white-robed teenager smiled faintly. His smile was very sincere, and not a single hint of falsehood could be detected. Instead, it made him feel as if he was bathing in spring. The white-robed teenager cast a scrutinizing glance at Su Ming's master in Seven Moons Sect, then said with a smile, "I haven't congratulated you, fellow Taoist Su. You've taken in a good disciple, so that your life matrix will be noble and you will have hope in attaining your Tao." Su Ming's master in Seven Moons Sect, the middle-aged man in the sky-blue Taoist robe, had a dark expression on his face at that moment. The other great sect elders beside him also had murderous looks on their faces as they stared at the white-robed teenager coldly. Only one of them was an old man with a head full of white hair. He had his eyes closed, and even though he stood among the great sect elders, he seemed to be different from the others. "Great Tao paragon Sun Mu has come to visit us, and your presence brings light to Seven Moons Sect. However, great Tao paragon, you did not come to us with courtesy. Instead, you entered sky beyond the sky recklessly. One Tao Sect. Are you looking down on Seven Moons Sect?" Su Ming's master in Seven Moons Sect said slowly while staring at Sun Mu. "I'm already here." The white-robed teenager's expression remained the same. He continued smiling, and when he swept his gaze past the great sect elders of Seven Moons Sect, his gaze landed on the old man who still had his eyes closed. "I have been rude. Greetings, Senior Gutai." He fell into a moment of pensive silence, then wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to the old man who still had his eyes closed. "You trespassed into our sky beyond the sky without permission, sealed our sect's expanse cosmos in the fifth layer, and even suppressed our disciples in it. Great Tao paragon, don't you think that you have lowered your status a little? Just because you said you were rude, where will Seven Moons Sect dignity be?" Su Ming's master in Seven Moons Sect, the middle-aged man in the sky-blue Taoist robe, took a step forward at that moment. "I'm sorry about this. I have been practicing cultivation for a long time, and I don't quite understand the ways of the world outside. I have indeed come here recklessly today, and I shouldn't have sealed the fifth layer of Seven Moons Sect sky beyond the sky. I have indeed lowered my status a little. I use my mighty pressure to restrain those juniors. If I have offended you in any way today, why don't you come and hit me?" The plain-robed young man had a smile on his face as he looked at Su Zhongfan. Other than the last sentence, his words were filled with sincerity. If this was the first time they had met, it would be hard to avoid their expressions from softening. But when he finished speaking, the tone of his words changed completely. The gazes of the 10-something great sect elders from Seven Moons Sect turned even colder, but no surprise appeared on their faces. Clearly, they had long since known of great Tao paragon Sun Mu's character. "Enough." The old man slowly opened his eyes. There were no pupils in his eyes, only a vast expanse of whiteness. When he looked at others, it gave them a very strange feeling. "Sun Mu, Seven Moons Sect will not hand him over. If you want to fight, Seven Moons Sect will fight. If you can come here for the eldest prince, then Seven Moons Sect will also be willing to destroy our sect for the third prince. But I heard that Azura clan, where the second prince is showing signs of rising." The old man's words were calm. Not a hint of joy or anger could be seen on his face. But when he spoke, the other great sect elders around him immediately took a step back, revealing the old man at the center. It was clear that they were treating him as their leader. Even the smile on the plain-robed young man's face disappeared at that moment. A solemn expression appeared on his face. "Senior Gutai, you are still as awe-inspiring as before." "Son, when I achieved my Tao," said the old man coolly, "you were still enjoying yourself at the knee of your master. Are you going to fight me or not? That's what I want to hear. Anything else is just too noisy. A powerful, domineering aura spread out from him. Sun Mu was silent. He cast a few scrutinizing glances at Gu Tai before him, and a faint glint appeared in his eyes. He sighed softly. I once heard my master mention that there were 3 ninth-level Tao gods in ancient Zong, and it was said that as long as they became great Tao paragons, they would definitely become 9th-level Tao gods. There was only one of them, and that was Senior Gu Tai of Seven Moons Sect. After all, you're the only cultivator who fought against the 3 ninth-level Tao gods and did not die. It's a pity that you have a knot in your heart, and it has caused you to be injured, causing you to be unable to become great Tao paragons. But I admit that you are still a senior. If you truly want to fight, I do not have much confidence in winning, Sun Mu said slowly. He looked at Gu Tai before him, then wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to him again. I came here today to make a bet with Seven Moons Sect. In the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, regardless of whether I win or lose, I will apologize and leave. And if I lose? The old man asked faintly. There are 100,000 Tao scrolls, and 300 scrolls containing different epiphanies for entering Tao spirit realm. Sun Mu immediately said without any hesitation. There's no need for that. If you win, there's no need for us to talk about anything. But if you lose, then all those from one Tao sect who invaded our land within an area of 1 million feet will die. When he said those words, Sun Mu's pupil shrank. All right, resolution appeared on his face. After all, while the old man before him was just a Tao paragon, forget Sun Mu, even his master was slightly wary of him and would not easily provoke him. The old man's reputation had been so great in the past that it had shaken all of ancient Zong, and he definitely had some tricks up his sleeves. It was said that he could copy one of the divine abilities from the 3 ninth-level Tao gods. That includes the sky, the old man said faintly. This time, Sun Mu fell silent, but soon nodded and decided to sit down cross-legged. With a swing of his right hand, an incense stick immediately appeared between him and the crowd. It swayed and was instantly lit. Sect Master, this is... Beside the old man was Su Ming's master, Su Zhongfan. At that moment, a hint of worry appeared on his face. When he was about to speak, Gu Tai cast him a glance. We can't help him with this either. If he fails, then it is his fate. It means that he is not someone who can fight for the position of successor. But if he wins, Seven Moons Sect will not hesitate to destroy our sect for him. There was determination in the old man's words, causing the other great sect elders around him to fall silent and not speak. Just as everyone's gazes were focused on the burning incense, as the smoke dissipated, the young man with dashing eyebrows in the 5th level of heaven beyond heaven, who had been motionless with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. There was a hint of killing intent and excitement in them. The game has started. The time it takes for an incense stick to burn. I only need the time it takes for half an incense stick to burn. At the instant the young man opened his eyes, cracking sounds came from his body. He seemed to have appeared in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. But at that moment, as the cracking sounds echoed, he seemed to have just descended. He took a step forward and turned into a long arc that charged towards the mountain of the 3rd line, where Su Ming was. Capture the 3rd prince alive. I won't do that. I want to kill him. I want to become the first cultivator in history to kill a member of the royal family. If I kill him, perhaps I will have the chance to snatch his life matrix. If I kill him, my level of cultivation will definitely rise. And even if I kill him, I won't be breaking the laws of ancient Zong for the next 3,000 years. As for 3,000 years later, if I can't reach the 9th level of Tao Divinity Realm, then there's no point in me living, but if I do, no one can do anything to me. The young man's laughter echoed in the air. He instantly appeared on the mountain of the 3rd line, but he did not step straight into the cliff where Su Ming was. Instead, once he appeared at the foot of the mountain, his laughter echoed in the air, and he walked up the mountain step by step. With each step he took, the mountain of the 3rd line would tremble. A powerful, Mighty pressure descended with each step he took, turning into an increasingly powerful presence that belonged to the young man. It was filled with confidence and excitement. Third prince, the person who will kill you, is Tian-He. Su Ming sat in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. Be it the seal in the expanse cosmos or the mighty suppression from before, none of them had any effect on him. It was as if they had avoided the region where Su Ming was. It was precisely because of this that Seven Moon's sect had agreed to Sun Mu's bed, or else the situation would have been completely different. Clearly, everything had been completely calculated by one Dao sect. At that moment, as he meditated with his eyes closed, Su Ming sensed the seal in the expanse cosmos. He sensed the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky being enveloped by a terrifying mighty pressure, causing it to turn into a prison. The auras of the people inside had become chaotic, and they were all fighting against it with great difficulty. Su Ming also sensed an additional presence in the prison-like fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. It was so strong that it brought with it killing intent, as well as a hint of madness. It caused the mountain to tremble, and the person's voice filled with crazed killing intent reached his ears. That's right. That's right. Su Ming sighed in his heart. He knew that he could not avoid this battle. He could only sigh at the fact that he had already found traces of his fusion with his shadow body, but he was still stuck at an invisible bottleneck, as if he lacked a turning point. Just as he was about to open his eyes, he suddenly froze, as if he was listening to something. After a long while, his expression remained calm, and he gave up on the thought of opening his eyes. The mountain trembled even more violently. The sounds of footsteps gradually reached his ears, along with low laughter. A presence that was the fusion of killing intent and excitement filled the entire third line. A dozen something breaths later, Tian-He appeared several hundreds of feet away from Su Ming, and his presence instantly reached its peak. Your Highness, Third Prince, you have already missed the best chance to fight back. Tian-He saw Su Ming meditating outside the house, and a smile appeared on his face. Those who could reach his level of cultivation were naturally not fools. He might be arrogant, but he was also a schemer. He had taken things one step at a time to create pressure on Su Ming, and another reason was that his level of cultivation had to return to its peak step by step after he went through the rune in Seven Moon's sect. That was the peak of the second level of Tao Divinity Realm. I'm here for the second update, asking for monthly votes. Chapter 1531. It's still early. Allow me to introduce myself so that you can know the details of the person who killed you, Your Highness. The young man with the dashing eyebrows walked up the stairs with a smile and headed towards Su Ming. I am Tian-He, the seventh disciple of One Dao Sect's second Dao Eagle. I am currently One Dao Sect's envoy of slaughter, and I am in the second level of Dao Divinity Realm. Speaking of my hometown, it's also ancient Zong. It's not far away from the royal capital, the young man said as he approached Su Ming. Now, I'm done with my introductions. Your Highness, you can die now. A moment ago, there was a smile on the young man's face, but in the next breath, that smile turned into a ferocious one. The killing intent in his eyes burned with excitement. As he spoke, he lifted his right hand and pointed at Su Ming. With it, the world roared. A large number of cracks appeared on the mountain of the third line. Sword shadows manifested in the air in front of the young man. In an instant, there were more than 1 million of them, and they charged towards Su Ming while blotting out the sky and earth. Each sword shadow contained a terrifying power that seemed to be able to tear apart the world. At the instant they charged towards him, Su Ming still did not open his eyes. However, he lifted his hands and formed a seal. His long hair immediately floated in the air, and his robes fluttered. A gentle light instantly enveloped his body and turned into a layer of protection. Loud booming sounds shook the sky and earth as they reverberated in the air. The 1 million sword shadows instantly submerged Su Ming. Soon after, as the booming sounds grew stronger, the sword shadows shattered and turned into a layer of crystalline light that scattered in all directions. Su Ming continued sitting cross-legged on the spot with his eyes closed. The protective screen of light around him had become much dimmer, but it did not shatter. Interesting. As expected of the third prince. Could it be that you have some protective, enchanted treasures on you? The young man smiled, but the killing intent in his eyes grew stronger. He took a step forward and instantly closed in on Su Ming. When he lifted his right hand, he placed two of his fingers together to form the tip of a sword. When he sliced through the air, a layer of white flames immediately burned. When they surrounded his fingers, he tapped the screen of light around Su Ming. At the instant he touched it, the screen of light shuddered violently. Cracking sounds rang out, and a crack immediately appeared. Shatter! At the instant the young man spoke with a cold sneer, the screen of light around Su Ming shattered with a bang and shattered into pieces. When a long, arrogant laugh rang out, the young man with the dashing eyebrows did not stop moving his right hand. Once he destroyed the screen of light, he charged towards the center of Su Ming's brows. "Your Highness, I won't see you out." The young man's laughter was still echoing in the air. At that moment, the person with the most nervous and worried expression in the seventh layer of sky beyond the sky was Su Zhongfan, who was dressed in the sky-blue Taoist robe. He was Su Ming's master. Even though he was only Su Ming's master in name and had forced the title on him, at that moment, his worry was the most sincere. It did not matter whether he was thinking for himself, but at that moment, he was worried about Su Ming. Sect Elder. In his worry, he could clearly see what was happening in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. In truth, all the people in the area could clearly see Su Ming and the young man's figures in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. This person is at the second level of the Tao God realm. This matter is unfair. Su Zhongfan suddenly looked at the first elder of the first line, Gu Tai. Continue watching. Gu Tai's expression was calm, but a brilliant light had already shone in his eyes. When he spoke faintly, the screen of light around Su Ming broke in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. At the instant the young man, with the dashing eyebrows finger, was about to touch the center of Su Ming's brows, Su Ming still had his eyes closed. He did not open them, and neither did he dodge. However, overlapping shadows appeared on his body, and a figure instantly shot out. It turned into a long arc and crashed into the young man's incoming finger. Booming sounds reverberated in the air. The young man's finger froze, and he took a few steps back. When he lifted his head, the figure who blocked his finger tumbled backwards and turned into Su Ming, but his face was pale. His body was illusory, and he looked like he was about to disappear at any moment. Clearly, Su Ming's figure had managed to withstand the attack just then with great difficulty. Shadow body. Not bad, not bad. The young man with the dashing eyebrows grinned. He suddenly disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was right in front of Su Ming's real body, who had his eyes closed and was meditating. Yet at that moment, Su Ming's shadow body also disappeared and appeared between the young man and Su Ming's real body. Booming sounds shook the sky and earth. As a layer of fog surrounded them, the young man with the dashing eyebrows lifted his right hand and seized the air in the direction of the sky. Sword of Heaven. A huge crack appeared in the sealed fifth layer sky. The moment it appeared, it turned into an irregular sword that looked like a crack. It charged towards the ground and Su Ming. Loud booming sounds spread in all directions, and Su Ming's shadow body was pierced through by the sword. It was reduced to black shards right in front of Su Ming's real body. When they tumbled backwards, they were sucked back into Su Ming's meditating body. At that moment, overlapping shadows appeared on Su Ming's body again. This time it was not just one shadow body, but two. One of them was Su Ming's winter of 4 seasons, the shadow of heaven that had gained an epiphany of winter. Once the two Su Mings appeared, they charged towards a young man with the dashing eyebrows. When they closed in on him in an instant, arrogance appeared in his eyes. He lifted his right foot and stomped on the ground. With a bang, a large amount of cracks appeared under his feet, and the moment they appeared, they immediately turned into distorted swords that charged towards the two Su Ming figures. Child's play. You overestimate yourself. Third prince. You will not be able to survive this disaster." As he spoke, the young man put his palms together in front of him and pushed them forward. With this push, his hair immediately fluttered in the wind like a violent gust of wind. The mountain under his feet trembled, and the world behind him distorted. Powerful rumbles came from the fifth layer of sky beyond heaven around him. Distorted swords instantly appeared in all directions around him. There seemed to be no end to them, and it was as if the entire space was filled with sword gleams. One sword slash to cut down. Almost at the instant the young man attacked, one of Su Ming's two shadows shot out. With a single move, he turned into a layer of black fog. As it tumbled about, a gigantic black palm manifested within it, and it charged towards the young man. At the same time, Su Ming's other shadow body, the shadow of Winter of Heaven, opened his eyes. Immediately, snow floated down in his world. The entire sky seemed to have darkened, and a snowstorm instantly appeared. At the same time, an eye that was about to open appeared in the sky, causing the entire fifth layer of sky beyond the sky to be enveloped in shadow. Your art isn't bad, but it's a pity that it's too weak. As the young man laughed madly, he parted his arms. The world roared, and countless sword glares instantly charged forward to crash into Su Ming's black fog palm. They tore apart the snowstorm around Su Ming, the snowflakes in the sky, and the eye that was about to open. At that instant, an astonishing bang rang out. In the midst of it, the eye in the sky was torn. The snowflakes in the area crumbled. Su Ming's shadow of Winter of Heaven shattered completely, and the black fog palm was also torn to pieces. They turned into wisps of black threads that tumbled backwards and charged towards Su Ming's real body, who was sitting cross-legged and meditating. All of them were sucked into his body. What other tricks do you have? Third Prince, Seven Moons Sect has the 7 Lives art. Even if I don't count your origin life art, you should still have 3 shadows, right? Only 3/10 of the time it takes for an incense stick to burn his past. Come, I'll play with you. Excitement appeared on the young man's face. He would definitely not act like this when he fought against other people, but when he fought against Su Ming, he liked it. He liked being toyed with, and he liked this feeling. After all, the person before him was the royal family of ancient Zong. It was a royal family that was so noble that he could not afford to not respect them. It was the Third Prince. Just the thought of having a chance to kill a member of the royal family made the young man with piercing eyebrows excited, which was why he wanted to continue that excitement. He wanted to make the Third Prince fear him. He wanted to see that fear. In the midst of his ferociousness and excitement, the young man with piercing eyebrows took a step forward. When he lifted his right hand, he brought it down swiftly. "Third Prince, why aren't you sending your 3 shadow bodies over for me to kill?" Once his voice echoed in the air, overlapping images appeared on Su Ming's body again. His final 3 shadow bodies instantly appeared and turned into the shadows of autumn, summer, and spring that charged towards the young man. When a young man with piercing eyebrows laughed madly, powerful killing intent appeared in Su Zhongfan's eyes in the 7th layer of sky beyond the sky. He glared at the young man with piercing eyebrows in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. Standing before them was the white-robed teenager. There was a smile on his face at that moment, but there was anger in his heart. He was not angry that he had killed him or captured him. Instead, he was angry that he should have been more decisive in killing him. This is his disaster. Continue watching. Gutai said faintly again. When Gutai said those words, the young man with piercing eyebrows' laughter echoed in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. He stared at the 3 shadows that had appeared in a flash when Su Ming's body overlapped with his. When he saw the 3 shadow bodies turn into Su Ming's appearance, the excitement of killing a prince rose within him again. It's time for the game to end. The time it takes for half an incense stick to burn is almost up. The young man with piercing eyebrows smiled. At the instant disdain appeared on his face, he lifted his right hand and pushed it against the ground. With a bang, the entire ground trembled. Even the mountain in the 3rd line looked as if it was about to collapse. In fact, the 13 mountains in the area trembled. Cracks appeared on the ground, and in an instant, They turned into swords that surrounded the young man with piercing eyebrows. At the instant the young man lifted his right hand from the ground, the swords gathered together and turned into a huge sword that was 1,000 feet long. It swung down horizontally and charged toward Su Ming. Booming sounds echoed in the air. The huge sword contained the power of the young man at the peak of the second level of Tao Divinity Realm. It cut through the shadow of autumn, the body of summer, and the mark of spring. At the instant, Su Ming's 3 shadow bodies shattered and fell back into his real body. The sword closed in on the top of his head. It was about to cut off his origin life. It is indeed time for the game to end. At that instant, Su Ming opened his eyes while he was meditating. There's still the 4th chapter. The 4th chapter will be released. Fellow Taoist, do you have a monthly ticket? Chapter 1532. It was the first time Su Ming opened his eyes in the 40-something years he had been meditating. It was the first time he had opened his eyes ever since he cleared the 18 formations. Even when he went to the Council of Elders, he had only sent his shadow body there. Even when the young man with dashing eyebrows had insulted him with all sorts of words, Su Ming had not opened his eyes. Even when all his shadow bodies had been destroyed, he still did not open his eyes. Only at that moment did he open his eyes for the first time in many years, revealing a dark light in his pupils. Almost at the instant he opened his eyes, and his gaze met that of the young man with the dashing eyebrows. The expression of the young man with the dashing eyebrows suddenly changed. At that instant, he felt as if a million bolts of lightning had exploded in his mind at the same time and turned into a powerful rumble. For some reason, his heart let out a thump, and an indescribable sense of life and death instantly enveloped his mind. That sense of danger appeared incredibly suddenly, so much so that Tian Jiaozi did not even have time to react to it. By then, Su Ming had already stood up. At the instant he did so, the sword cut down on Su Ming's head with a bang. But when it was 7 inches away from his head, it seemed to have been blocked by some invisible power and could not sink even an inch further. Explode. As a powerful warrior in the 2nd level of Tao Divinity Realm, Tian Jiaozi had an incredibly rich amount of experience in battles. At that moment, he let out a low shout without any hesitation and took a step forward to charge at Su Ming. With a loud bang that surged into the sky, the sword crumbled and exploded. It turned into countless shards that instantly submerged Su Ming. At the same time, the young man with the dashing eyebrows rushed into the distortions in space formed by the shards. But at the instant he did so, a shocked cry of surprise rang out, and the young man tumbled backwards. When he was 1,000 feet away, he coughed up a mouthful of blood, and disbelief appeared on his face. When he looked over, the distortions formed by the shards of the shattered sword looked as if time had stopped. All of them floated in the air and did not move. Su Ming's expression was calm. Once he walked out, he stood there, and not a single shadow could be seen beneath him. A presence that caused Tian Jiaozi's heart to be apprehensive was gathering madly around Su Ming's body. I have to thank you. It was because of your appearance that I fused with my 7 shadows and gathered together. My Tao shadow. The feeling of fusing with the Tao shadow is not bad. Once Su Ming cast a glance at his body, he smiled faintly and suddenly took a step forward. In an instant, he appeared in front of Tian Jiao. When he lifted his right hand, he swung it casually, and Tian Jiao's expression changed swiftly. When he lifted his hands and formed a seal, countless sword lights shone behind him and turned into 1,000,000 swords that charged toward Su Ming. Child's play. You overestimate yourself. This is your disaster. You will not be able to get through it, Su Ming said flatly. What he said were the words the young man, with dashing eyebrows, had said previously. In the face of the incoming 1,000,000 sword glares, Su Ming only swung his right hand, and the world immediately roared. The sword glares instantly froze in midair as if they had been frozen, and Su Ming's right hand had already pressed against the young man's chest, which was about to retreat with a shocked expression on his face. At the instant Su Ming's palm closed in, more than 1,000 layers of overlapping screens of light appeared around the young man's body, but when Su Ming's palm touched them, they shattered layer by layer. In the blink of an eye, they shattered completely, allowing Su Ming's palm to land on the young man's chest. When a loud bang rang out, the young man let out a shrill scream of pain. His body tumbled backwards like a kite with its string snapped. When he was forced thousands of feet away, light shone on his chest and gathered together to form a shattered crystal. When it turned into powder, it looked as if it had withstood the attack in his place. Disbelief appeared on Tian Jiaozi's face. It was difficult for him to accept that the third prince, whom he had bullied as if he had just killed a moment ago, had become so strong that it was hard for him to believe it. This change had happened too quickly, and the contrast was too great, causing Tian Jiaozi to feel as if he was in a dream. However, the shattering of the life protection crystal served as a constant reminder to him. When Tian Jiaozi sucked in a sharp breath, he could not hide the shock in his eyes. What level of cultivation do you have? My level of cultivation. Su Ming's expression was calm. He closed his eyes slightly, and when he reopened them, his hair moved without wind. His robes fluttered violently, and his aura erupted with a bang at an astonishing speed. It shocked the young man with the dashing eyebrows so much that he seemed to have stopped breathing. It was not the first level of Tao Divinity Realm, and neither was it the second level of Tao Divinity Realm. It was Tao Spirit Realm, which was in the third level of Tao Divinity Realm. The entire fifth layer of sky beyond the sky trembled at that instant. The sky tumbled about, the ground roared, and the 13 mountains trembled simultaneously. It was as if Su Ming had become the most dazzling sun in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky at that moment. At the instant his aura and his cultivation base spread out, it looked as if they wanted to freeze all the laws in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. In fact, there was even a hint of the power to reverse time in those laws. This scene not only caused Tian Jiaozi's expression to change drastically, even the pupils of all the people in the seventh layer of sky beyond the sky shrank. When laughter tumbled out of Su Zhongfan's mouth, a hint of a smile appeared at the corners of Gutai's lips. Across them was Sun Mu. He was still sitting cross-legged, but his expression had turned slightly sour. There was even a hint of shock in his eyes. He was shocked that Su Ming's level of cultivation was at the third level of Tao Spirit Realm, and by the looks of it, he had just reached a breakthrough not long ago. His cultivation base was not stable yet. Perhaps more accurately speaking, this was not a breakthrough, but a Tao shadow that had gathered together to forcefully push him into quasi-Tao Spirit Realm. He still needed to go through the Tao Spirit's voice to heaven before he could truly reach Tao Spirit Realm, where he would become one with the spirits of the world. But no matter what, the power that erupted from Su Ming at that moment was so strong that he could not hope to fight against it. What caused Sun Mu's pupils to shrink was the hint of time stopping and time reversing in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky when Su Ming's presence spread out. But Sun Mu did not care about the frozen time in the fifth layer. What he cared about was the hint of power that allowed time to reverse. If Sun Mu was in such a state, then it was even more so for Tian Jiaozi, who was facing Su Ming at that moment. At the instant Su Ming's cultivation base was completely revealed, shock and astonishment filled his heart. He could never have imagined that what he had thought to be a simple slaughter would turn out to be such an unacceptable turn of events. He was supposed to be an expert, and he was supposed to excitedly kill the third prince to increase his own luck. That was how things should have turned out. But things had turned out this way. The person he originally wanted to kill had actually become a powerful existence that surpassed him. From a strong person, he directly became a weakling. This scene made the young man with dashing eyebrows feel that all his previous words, all his excitement, all his arrogance had instantly become a childish and indescribable joke. He had actually thought that he was so strong that he could kill a powerful warrior in Tao Spirit Realm. He had actually been arrogant and domineering in front of a powerful warrior in Tao Spirit Realm. All of this instantly turned into a cold chill. Madness appeared on Tian Jiaozi's face, and as he roared, he retreated. He lifted his hands and struck the center of his brows. Immediately, veins popped up on his skin and cracks appeared on his physical body. Origin Dao Sword. A hoarse roar tumbled out of Tian Jiaozi's mouth, and booming sounds came from his body. Blood-red swords instantly charged out of the cracks on his body and gathered together to form a huge blood-red sword in front of him. It stirred up a sea of blood that surged into the sky, and it charged towards Su Ming. Tian Jiaozi had decided to fight with everything he had. Your art isn't bad, but it's a pity that it's too weak. A hint of derision appeared in Su Ming's eyes. At the instant he spoke, he lifted his right hand and pointed at the sky. Winter's Shadow. Su Ming had executed this art with his shadow body, and Tian Jiaozi had mocked him with his previous words. Yet when Su Ming executed it, the young man's face instantly turned pale. The entire sky turned black at that moment. The black sky looked as if it was about to shatter and fall off. Countless snowflakes floated down, but they were not white, but the color of night. When the black snow floated down from the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky, Su Ming brought his right hand down and pointed at Tian Jiaozi. This is the winter's disaster of heaven that I will give you. At the instant Su Ming said those words flatly, all the black snow that filled the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky froze for a moment before charging towards Tian Jiaozi with a piercing whistle. It was as if the shadow of the sky had descended and wanted to assimilate Tian Jiaozi so that he would become a part of the shadow of the night sky. Progenitor, save me. Tian Jiaozi let out a shrill scream of pain. The speed of the blood sword in front of him increased exponentially. It shone with a blood-red light that surged into the sky, causing the sea of blood behind him to roar. He formed a seal with his left hand and struck his chest. When he coughed up blood, the 13 mountains around him roared, and 13 blood swords appeared. They charged towards the black snow that swept towards him from all directions. Tian Jiaozi grabbed one of the blood swords and charged towards Su Ming. When he rushed over, the 13 blood swords fused into the sword in his hand. His power of the second level of Dao Divinity realm erupted from his body like it was at its peak, causing his speed to become faster. However, the sea of blood behind him was instantly covered by the black snow and sealed in ice. As he charged forward, his body was enveloped by the howling black snowstorm. Even his shrill cries were drowned out by the howls of the wind and snow. Su Ming's expression remained the same. He did not move and stared coldly at Tian Jiaozi, closing in on him. When the tip of the sword was 10 inches away from the center of Su Ming's brows, Tian Jiaozi's body froze. His eyes went wide, and he stared at Su Ming with a listless expression. Cracking sounds came from his body, and it was covered by black snow. When even his listless eyes were covered by the black snow, his body seemed to have fused with the darkness. Su Ming's expression was indifferent. He stood in midair and lifted his head. His gaze seemed to be able to pierce through the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky to look at the seventh layer. He wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed. Without destruction, there can be no construction. Thank you for your guidance, Sect Elder. Fellow Taoist, I long for the monthly votes. I long for the first place. I believe that if all the readers cast their monthly votes, even if it's just one vote, we will be able to get the first place. I beg for everyone to get a monthly vote. Chapter 1533. I believe that if every one of our readers cast 5 monthly votes, we will definitely be number 1. I believe that even if it's not 5 monthly votes, even if it's just 1 monthly vote, as long as everyone has 1 monthly vote, we will still be number 1. I'm begging everyone for a monthly vote. As long as you followed us to this day, it's not too much to ask for a monthly vote from you. Chapter 1534. In the 7th level of Heaven Beyond Heaven, the white-robed young man's expression was not gloomy, and it was impossible to tell whether he was happy or angry. He only sighed softly, and a smile appeared on his face. He slowly stood up and looked at the remaining 30% of the incense before him. When he raised his head, his gaze landed on Gutai, and he cupped his fists and bowed slightly. I have lost this round. However, as a senior, your methods in this round are truly a little. However, I still admire you. I never expected that the arrival of my one Dao sect would be used by you to help the third prince make a breakthrough. I'm afraid that if we hadn't arrived, he would have needed at least a few hundred years to break through. The plain-robed young man said with a smile. There wasn't much emotion in his words, but there was a flash of light in his eyes. I might not be able to use it in a few hundred years, but it's true that I won't be able to reach a breakthrough soon. I have to thank one Dao sect for helping me with this. Gutai spoke indifferently. His expression was the same as usual, without any change. However, as he stood there, Sun Mu became even more fearful. He knew that he did not lose in the match with Su Ming, but in the entire situation. During their first contact, he had completely lost. One Dao sect's plan included locating Su Ming's location, figuring out that Dao Han would use the Seven Moons Snow Rune. Tian, he sneaking into the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky through a gap in the rune, and even Sun Mu's arrival, sealing him and intimidating him into suppressing him. All of this had been perfect in their eyes and had been kept secret. Clearly, this matter had been hidden from almost all the people in Seven Moon's sect, but not from the old man, Gutai. However, Gutai did not stop Su Ming. Instead, he pushed the matter even more smoothly, and with one Dao sect's power, Su Ming reached a breakthrough. He fused with the Seven Lives art and reached Dao's spirit realm. Sun Mu couldn't say anything about this. If they could scheme against the Seven Dao sect, then the Seven Dao sect could naturally scheme against them, especially the agreement between the two of them. Now that he looked back, it wasn't an agreement at all. It was a trap. I'm impressed. I'm impressed. The white-robed teenager cast a deep glance at the old Gutai in front of him. This old man had been famous for many years in ancient Zong, and he had made Seven Moons' sect rise to power with his own power. He finally understood why some people in the sect regarded Seven Moons' sect with such importance. What they paid attention to was not Seven Moons' sect, but Gutai. Since you've lost, this old man will take back your bet. At the instant Gutai spoke faintly, he lifted his right hand and seized the air. With it, the entire seventh layer of sky beyond the sky trembled. At the same time, all the seals in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky crumbled at that instant. During that instant, a huge hand manifested in the snow and wind in the area of the Seven Moons Blizzard Rune controlled by Dao Han. It did not seize any direction, but instead clenched its fist. In the instant that he clenched his fist, the wind and snow seemed to come to a standstill. However, in the next breath, when the huge hand relaxed its fist, an enormous wave of ice and snow that was nearly 100 times more violent than the one before instantly stirred up an unprecedented madness. Wherever the blizzard went, the cultivators from one Dao sect who had invaded were instantly sealed in ice. Their life force was instantly extinguished, and they turned into ice sculptures. If anyone looked over, they would find that there were tens of thousands of such ice sculptures in the blink of an eye. As the blizzard swept through the area, cracking sounds rang out. Cries of surprise and shrill terror rose, and more cultivators from one Dao sect cast their divine abilities. Some of them had fear on their faces, some were retreating in an attempt to escape, and some charged forward ferociously. But no matter what they did, it was all in the past. At that moment, their bodies were sealed in ice. From the distance, it was as if the ground had turned into a world of wind and snow, and all the cultivators who were not from Seven Moons' sect had all turned into ice sculptures. There were nearly 100,000 ice sculptures. The vastness of this scene was enough to make the hearts of all those who saw it tremble violently. Only the black-robed old man who had been fighting against Dao Han watched all of this in shock. Without any hesitation, he retreated in the blizzard. A sense of death instantly rose in his heart, but the moment he retreated, cracking sounds came from his body, and frost appeared on it. Before he could retreat 1,000 feet, his body was sealed in ice and turned into a statue. But even so, he was still in Tao's spirit realm. At that moment, he let out a shrill roar and formed a seal with his hands. Black smoke spread out from his body, and with a bang, the ice around him shattered. Only a small crack appeared, but it was that crack that allowed the black-robed old man to disappear in a flash. However, at the instant he disappeared, a red light shot out from the wind and snow. It was a drop of blood, a drop of Dalhan's blood. That drop of blood left behind it in a long arc, and as it flew out, it crystallized into a sharp drop of ice and snow. The instant the black-robed old man disappeared, it followed after him. A muffled groan could be heard coming from the crack in the ice. That groan was very weak, as if the person had been heavily injured. Clearly, even if he had managed to escape, he had paid a devastating price for it. But that was not the end. Once all the cultivators from one Taoist sect on the ground turned into ice statues, the cracks on the ground and the shattered parts were all covered by the blizzard, turning into an ice surface that looked like a mirror. When anyone looked over, they found that there were no longer any cracks beyond Seven Moons sect. At the same time, the wind and snow in the area stirred up and charged into the sky. The outline of one of the three statues in one Tao sect formed by the cracks was swiftly disappearing, as if it wanted to leave before the wind and snow closed in on it, but it was still a step too late. At the instant it was about to disappear, cracking sounds rang out, and the outline formed by the cracks was instantly frozen in the sky. The ice spread swiftly, and before long, the entire outline would turn into an ice sculpture. Progenitor Sun Mu, save me. When an anxious cry of surprise rang out, the white-robed young man in the seventh layer of sky beyond the heavens remained the same. He continued smiling as he looked at the old man before him, Gutai, but the dark light in his eyes had turned cold. But he did not move. This was their bet. With his status and level of cultivation, he could do shameless things, but he could not fulfill the promise. At that moment, the incense stick was still burning, but there was only 2/10 of it left. But at that moment, Su Ming wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to Gutai while he was in the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. Sect Master, please do not freeze everything. These people schemed against me. If I only kill one of them, it will be difficult for me to understand my thoughts. When Su Ming spoke, he took a step forward and instantly stepped out of the fifth layer of sky beyond the sky. He appeared in a world of blizzard in the first layer of sky beyond the sky. He swept his gaze across the ground, and when he saw the nearly 100,000 ice statues, he lifted his head to look at the outline formed by the frozen cracks in the sky. With a single move, he turned into a long black arc that charged towards the right eye of the outline of the statue. Oh! The eyes of Gutai in the seventh layer of sky beyond the sky lit up. A hint of a smile appeared at the corners of his lips, and there was a hint of praise in his eyes. He did not expect that Su Ming would make such a decision. At that moment, when he smiled and shook his head, an aggressive look appeared in his eyes, and he looked at the white-robed teenager. The white-robed teenager was silent. He did not speak, but when he turned around, his gaze seemed to pierce through Seven Moons sect. When he saw Su Ming, his pupils shrank slightly. The members of the royal family are indeed not people who can be bullied at will. When the white-robed teenager spoke softly, the long black arc that Su Ming had turned into instantly rushed into the right eye of the outline of the statue in the sky. At the instant Su Ming stepped into it, he appeared above the lake in the world. The lake had already turned into a layer of ice. The entire world had turned into ice at that moment. Only the pavilion on the lake was the only other color in the world besides the one that had turned white. There were also 2 middle-aged scholars meditating in the pavilion. They seemed to be using all their power to persevere and fight back. If any bystander saw this scene, they would definitely find it rather familiar. It was just like when a young man with the dashing eyebrows approached Su Ming. Su Ming had been meditating, but at that moment their identities had changed. The 2 scholars were meditating, and Su Ming had come with killing intent. Su Ming would naturally not waste his breath and nag like the young man with the dashing eyebrows. Once he appeared, he moved. When he closed in on them, the 2 middle-aged scholars opened their eyes at the same time, revealing their pupils that looked as if they were about to freeze at that moment. The two of them might seem incredibly powerful to others, but to Su Ming, one of them was in the second level of Tao Divinity Realm, and the other was in the first level of Tao Divinity Realm. The moment they opened their eyes, Su Ming had already closed in on them. He lifted his right hand and pointed forward. The scholar in the second level of Tao Divinity Realm immediately roared. He opened his mouth and coughed up blood. His blood instantly turned into a blood-red screen of light, as if it wanted to stop Su Ming. But the instant Su Ming's body touched the screen of blood, he disappeared. The pupils of the scholar in the second level of Tao Divinity Realm shrank. His heart let out a thump, and Su Ming appeared behind him. He lifted his right index finger without stopping. At the instant the scholar in the second level of Tao Divinity Realm moved forward to avoid it, he pierced through the back of his head. With a crack, the scholar shuddered. His body instantly turned black, and his soul was destroyed. "Were you the one who orchestrated this scheme?" Su Ming pulled back his right hand. When he turned around, he looked at the other scholar. His face was pale at that moment. He was sitting cross-legged, and when he stared at Su Ming coldly, his face turned from white to red. The power of self-destruction spread out from his body with a bang, and it turned into a hint of arrogance at the corners of his lips. If he died, he would die in his own hands, and not because of other people's respect. "It's not that easy to seek death," Su Ming said faintly. "Let me tell everyone about the shocking scene. Last night, there was an earthquake here. I was so scared. Let's not talk about it. I don't have enough space, so I'll tell you the details in the novel. I'll update normally today and the day after tomorrow. I'll update 4 times. Please give me monthly votes to calm my nerves." Chapter 1535. Before the Abyss Builders, seeking death was not in their own hands, because the Abyss Builders' inborn divine abilities contained the ability to reverse time. It was just like at that moment. At the instant Su Ming spoke and the scholar was about to self-destruct, Su Ming lifted his right hand and tapped the center of the scholar's brow lightly. With that, time began to flow in reverse around the scholar. The self-destruction in his body dissipated, and his expression changed rapidly. That change was not something he could control, but was caused by the reversal of time. However, in his heart, a monstrous wave was set off, and an unprecedented sense of terror and astonishment appeared in his heart. The art to reverse time had never appeared in ancient Zhong before. While the scholar was in shock, Su Ming's right index finger turned into a palm and struck the middle-aged scholar's forehead. A vast power instantly surged into the scholar's body and sealed it. Then, Su Ming grabbed the person's hair and lifted him up. With one move, he left the world of ice and snow. Beneath him, the pavilion instantly turned into an ice sculpture. Su Ming appeared in the sky, above Seven Moons Sect. With the middle-aged scholar in hand, he charged to the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. At the same time, the white-robed teenager averted his gaze from Su Ming in the 7th layer of sky beyond the sky and spoke flatly. "Isn't this a little overboard? You can kill the people from one Tao sect, but capturing them alive is a little overboard. That's as spoils of war." Gutai smiled faintly. He cast a glance at the white-robed teenager, then fell into a moment of pensive silence before he shook his head. "All right, since Great Tao Paragon Senmu has requested it, I promise you that this person will not live for more than a month. The conflict between One Tao Sect and Seven Moons Sect is unavoidable. You will have to prepare for this battle," the white-robed teenager said flatly. He wrapped his fist in his palm towards Gutai, then turned around and stepped into the air. In an instant, he left Seven Moons Sect. When he appeared in the world outside, a freezing glare and killing intent appeared in his eyes. One Tao Sect and Seven Moons Sect had only engaged in a small skirmish. One Tao Sect had lost, but to One Tao Sect, the damage they suffered was insignificant. When the white-robed teenager left, the snow and wind beyond Seven Moons Sect gradually disappeared. Only the 100,000 ice sculptures on the ground bore witness to the devastation of the battle. The Seven Moons Sect disciples remained silent for a short period of time. They did not cheer. Instead, They cleaned up the battlefield and searched for the corpses of their sect members. Once they offered sacrifices, another group of people specialized in carving runes on the ice sculptures. The one Tao sect disciples in the ice sculptures still looked alive. Their bodies and looked like they were still alive. Their bodies and the ice sculptures they had turned into were the best materials for the ice puppets. As the disciples of the fourth layer of sky beyond the sky patrolled, most of them 7 Tao sect, 7 sky Tao sect, and sect Tao, sect. The 7 Tao beyond the Tao sect, were Su Chi in sect beyond the sect Ming sect. They had A. As for Su Ming, he sat cross-legged in the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky with a calm expression. Outside his house was a huge kiln, and it was the old outer sect attendant, but he no longer had a physical body. There was only a fragment of his soul left, and he was continuously letting out faint, shrill cries of pain. Aside from a kiln was the scholar Su Ming had captured. At that moment, the scholar's eyes were closed, as if he was in deep sleep. He had lost his consciousness. While the cultivators in the various layers of 7 Moons sect were busy with their own matters, Su Ming stared at the middle-aged scholar. A hint of hesitation appeared on his face. After a long while, a glint appeared in his eyes, and determination appeared in them. I do indeed want to see just who wants to kill me. Once Su Ming made his decision, he no longer hesitated. At the instant he closed his eyes, he lifted his left hand and pushed it against his chest. At the same time, the center of his brows split open. His third eye instantly appeared, revealing 3 Tao divinities. However, the third Tao divinity was rather indistinct, as if it did not have a corporeal form. However, at that instant, the 3 Tao divinities opened their eyes at the same time. A brilliant light shone in their eyes, and Su Ming lifted his right hand to tap the center of the middle-aged scholar's brow. At the instant his finger touched the middle-aged scholar's forehead, his body shuddered. When he opened his eyes, a dazed look appeared in them. His pupils also spread out, as if they wanted to replace the white in his eyes. During that instant, his mind felt as if it had been pierced by a sharp blade. When it swept through his mind, all barriers instantly disappeared, and he became a memory that Su Ming could sense at will. If it was just a simple search of the scholar's memories, Su Ming would not have hesitated for long, and neither would he have executed the power of the 3rd level of Tao divinity. What he wanted to do was not just search through the scholar's memories, but also use the time reversal art to use the scholar's memories and body as a guide to form a connection with the people and things in his memories so that he could form a tunnel. Not only did he want to use his mind to see just who the so-called first prince was, he also wanted to test and see just what level of cultivation that person possessed. This was the reason why Su Ming did not immediately kill the scholar when he wanted to enter the world in the right eye of the statue's outline. At that moment, when the scholar shuddered and a dazed look appeared on his face, Su Ming's body jolted. When his finger touched the center of the middle-aged scholar's brow, a vortex seemed to have appeared. It was like a tunnel, and once it dragged Su Ming's mind inside, a loud bang immediately rang out in Su Ming's mind. As it did so, he felt as if he had turned into a lone boat floating in a raging sea. He swam through the scholar's memories, and when an unknown amount of time passed, Su Ming's mind shuddered. "Wu Kuan, what's wrong?" A hesitant voice reached his ears. When Su Ming opened his eyes, he immediately saw the person beside him looking at him. It was the cultivator in the 2nd level of Tao divinity realm he had killed previously. It was a volcano that looked like it was about to erupt, and at that moment, Su Ming was in the depths of the volcano. He was at the edge of a pool of magma. Waves of heat crashed into his face, and waves of black smoke tumbled out of the magma to charge upwards. When Su Ming lifted his head to look, he found that the volcano did not have a mouth. It seemed to be a complete mountain, but there were a large number of cracks around it. If anyone looked at the mountain from the outside, they would definitely be able to see that it was a strange mountain covered in cracks, and each crack was shining with red light. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. When he lowered his head, he saw that he was dressed in a scholar's long robe. In his hand was a fan. At that moment, he was the person whose memories he had fused into and whose memories he had occupied with the time reversal art. "It's nothing." Su Ming smiled faintly and spoke to the scholar in the second level of Tao Divinity realm beside him. The eldest prince should be coming out of isolation soon. Basically, he walks out of Flame Lake at this time every day. Tell him the plan later. If the eldest prince agrees to it, we can submit it to the sect so that they can make a decision. When the scholar beside Su Ming spoke, the magma in the volcano suddenly tumbled about violently. When booming sounds echoed in the air, the magma looked as if it had exploded and stirred up waves of fire. A figure instantly flew out from the wave of fire. As the wave of fire poured down like rain, the figure stood on a huge rock in the middle of the magma. His back was turned towards Su Ming, and there was only the rain of fire separating the two of them. "Greetings, Your Highness." The scholar beside Su Ming immediately wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to him respectfully, but soon he was surprised because Su Ming did not bow to him. At that moment, when the rain of fire completely fell, the figure with his back turned towards Su Ming slowly turned around to reveal a handsome face. It was a young man dressed in a white robe. At the instant the young man turned around to look at Su Ming, he frowned slightly. At the instant Su Ming saw the young man clearly, a loud bang instantly rang out in his head. At first glance, the so-called eldest prince was rather familiar, but when he took a closer look, he swiftly remembered that this person was rather similar to Old Man Extermination. In fact, it could be said that this person was the much younger Old Man Extermination. Su Ming could also sense a hint of Lei Chen's presence from this person. "Wu Kuan, why aren't you greeting His Highness?" When the scholar beside Su Ming saw that there was something off about Su Ming, he quickly spoke up and wrapped his fist in his palm towards the eldest prince. "Please forgive me, eldest prince. I have been planning a grand plan lately, which is why I am a little absent-minded." "It's fine. I'm not a person who cares too much about rules." "Wu Kuan, how's the plan going?" The eldest prince smiled faintly and looked at Su Ming. A smile appeared on Su Ming's face. He stared at the eldest prince and the much younger Old Man Extermination, and he remembered the words Old Man Extermination had said to him after he lost to him in Harmonious Morris Alba and was sucked away by Xianzong. "This is just the beginning, huh?" When Su Ming smiled, he lifted his right foot, and with one step, he instantly leaped over the magma to charge towards the eldest prince. The moment he took that step, the eldest prince's pupil shrank. Without any hesitation, he lifted his right hand and flung it upwards. With a bang, the magma instantly exploded and turned into an indescribable wave of heat that charged towards Su Ming. Once it turned into a barrier, a shocking boom erupted from it. At the same time, Su Ming also lifted his right hand. With a swing, a gust of freezing wind instantly charged forward. At the instant it touched the magma, booming sounds reverberated in the air, and the magma froze into a mountain rock. "You're not Wu Kuan. Who are you?" A strange light shone in the eldest prince's eyes. At the instant he spoke, a solemn expression appeared on his face. "I already know who you are." Su Ming did not continue moving forward. Instead, as he moved backwards, the light in his eyes disappeared. The entire world shattered before Su Ming's eyes. When he opened his eyes again, they shone brilliantly. He was sitting on a mountain in the 5th layer of 7 moons sect sky beyond the sky. In front of him was the dead scholar, Wu Kuan, who was bleeding from his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. The moment Su Ming's consciousness returned, a jade slip shot through the air from the 7th layer of sky beyond the sky and appeared right in front of him. Light shone from the jade slip, and an old voice came from it. "You're right. Third Prince, I am Gutai. Please come to the 7th layer of sky beyond the sky to meet me." All of you should have an impression of the mosquito and Bai Fan in the Immortal Renegade. I wonder if you still remember Bai Fan. Chapter 1536. Su Ming lifted his head. His gaze landed on the jade slip, and a hint of pensive expression appeared on his face. After some time, he stood up and swung his arm. Immediately, the middle-aged scholar's dead physical body was torn to shreds and reduced to ashes before him. The strongest person in Seven Moons sect, the great sect elder of the first line, Gu Tai, who is known as Sect Master. Su Ming was not unfamiliar with this person. After all, he had been in Seven Moons sect for around 50 years. When he had woken up, he had received guidance from the person who seemed to be Tian Xiezi, which allowed Su Ming to gain quite a large amount of knowledge regarding ancient Zong. This person is also the one who reminded me that if I want to fuse with the Seven Lives art, I will need to destroy it before creating it. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes, and the pensive look in them disappeared. Once he returned to normal, he lifted his right hand and took the jade slip before taking a step into the air. With it, the jade slip in his hand shone with a dazzling light. It instantly turned into a vortex that submerged Su Ming within it, and he disappeared from the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. At that moment, the 13 great sect elders, including Dao Han, were sitting on a tall altar at the center of the first continent in the 7th layer of sky beyond the sky. At that moment, a vortex appeared out of nowhere at the center of the altar. When it dissipated and the 13 people looked over, Su Ming's figure gradually appeared. "Greetings, great sect elders." Su Ming swept his gaze across the area, then wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to them. He might not belong to that sect, and he had his own goal in coming to it. But he had seen the sect attack when they faced one Dao sect, and it had touched him slightly. That was why he bowed to them at that moment. The gazes of the 13 great sect elders landed on Su Ming. This was the first time many of them saw him face to face. At that moment, the middle-aged man with the sky-blue Taoist robe, who was Su Ming's master in Seven Moons sect, smiled. "My disciple, don't be reserved. We have long since learned of your identity, and it is precisely because of it that I was in a hurry to become your master in the past. I hope that you will not blame me for this, third prince." When Su Ming heard those words, his expression might have remained calm, but he did not expect that his master would admit to it so easily. Because of it, Su Ming gained some respect for his master in Seven Moons sect. "Third prince, please sit." The person who spoke was Gu Tai, one of the 13 great sect elders. A smile appeared on his face, and there was praise on his face. When he spoke to Su Ming slowly, Su Ming did not refuse. Instead, he sat down cross-legged. "I'm sure that with the third prince's imperial bloodline, your cultivation base, and your intelligence, you'll definitely be able to see some clues from our cultivation base. Here, apart from Dao Han, who joined the sect later and whose cultivation base is at the 3rd level Dao Spirit Realm, 8 of the 13 people are at the 7th level Dao Master Realm, while the other 4 are at the 5th or 6th level Dao God Realm. We are Seven Moons sect support. As long as we exist, Seven Moons sect will exist. If we die, then Seven Moons sect will no longer exist," Gu Tai said faintly. Ming did not speak. Of Su of Ming Qing. "Don't blame Su Zhongfan. He is indeed in a hurry to become your master, because only by doing so can he form a slight connection with your life matrix. Only then will he have a chance to take a gamble on the possibility of becoming a great Dao Paragon. But you must know that this sort of gamble is also filled with determination. This determination came from the moment he said that he wanted to become your master. From then on, your survival is bound to be the thing he cares about the most. Your success or failure is bound to be a challenge he cannot avoid. If you fail, he will lose his cultivation base, the remaining years of his life, and all his fate. The stakes in this gamble are so great that I hope you don't understand it. In fact, even if I attack you right now, do you believe that your master will grit his teeth and turn against you? No matter what, he will save you, because he has already formed a connection with your life matrix that cannot be severed," Gu Tai said slowly while casting Su Ming a deep glance. "It is precisely because of this that I made the decision to drag Seven Moons sect into the fight for the throne and help you with everything I have. because be it Su Zhongfan or the other 11 great sect elders, in truth, they are all my disciples. Once he said those words, Su Ming's expression changed. This was something he did not know. However, once they achieved their Tao, I asked them not to call me master. My disciples have formed a connection with your life matrix, and, as their master, I have also been dragged into this. That is why from now on, the 13 of us and the hundreds of thousands of disciples in Seven Moons Sect will help you with everything we have. Gu Tai's voice echoed in the air, causing Su Ming to remain silent for a short period of time before he turned his head to cast a glance at his master. Su Zhongfan was feeling slightly guilty at that moment, but Su Ming did not know whether he was feeling guilty towards Su Ming or his master. In the end, Su Ming cast his gaze on Gu Tai. What do I need to do? Su Ming asked calmly. His words and tone were no longer speaking as a disciple of Seven Moons Sect, but as equals to the people around him. The eldest prince has one Dao Sect's help. One Dao Sect is so strong that it is the leader of the 7 sects. The second prince has Azura clan's help. Azura clan is an outsider sect, but its strength is also unfathomable. In fact, it surpasses one Dao sect in certain aspects. Because Azura clan has one of the 3 legendary 9th-level Dao gods in ancient Zong, Heaven Azura. When Gu Tai said those words, the expressions of the 12 sect elders in the area changed. Clearly, this was the first time they had heard of this. But Senior Heaven Azura has been in isolation for a long time. Unless Azura clan runs into a matter of life and death, he will not come out of isolation, and neither will he join the fight for the throne. Because if he wants to join, then the first person he will have to face is your father, the ancient emperor, who is also one of the 3 9th-level Dao gods in ancient Zong. One Dao sect and Azura clan are the 2 great enemies you will have to face right now, because the kismet of these 2 sects is the same as Seven Moons sects. They have already formed a connection that cannot be severed from you, 3 princes. Because of that, the other sects and clans will gradually gather together around the 3 of us, and 3,000 years later, a war to fight for the throne will erupt. But the prerequisite is that you will not die before that war arrives. This is something you must remember. If you die, then Seven Moons sect will be eliminated from the fight for the throne. This is one of the reasons. Secondly, while your level of cultivation is already in Dao spirit realm, it is not stable. You need to sound your Dao spirit voice. This is a major event, and Seven Moons sect will make detailed preparations. At that time, all the sects and clans in ancient Zong will witness you sounding your Dao spirit voice. By doing so, we can help you build momentum. Thirdly, your level of cultivation is still not high enough. We cannot help you too much in terms of cultivation, but the phala of Dao verification that comes once every 10,000 eons is about to ripen. This time, all of ancient Zong will fight for it. The phala of Dao verification blooms once every 5,000 eons, and when it blooms for another 5,000 eons, the phala of Dao verification will bear fruit. Each time, there will only be 2 fruits, and one of them will be big and one small. The big one can be refined into a supreme treasure. This treasure can contain all manner of things in the world, and it is indescribably amazing. The small one is the most valuable. Once you swallow it and isolate yourself for 3 months, your level of cultivation will increase by 1 to 3 levels of Dao Divinity Realm. However, you will need to be in Dao Spirit Realm to consume it, and once it takes effect, it will be limited to those below Dao Paragon Realm. This is the 8th time the phala of Dao verification has borne fruit. Fourth, you lack enchanted treasures. In terms of enchanted treasures, the treasures in Seven Moons Sect are no longer suitable for you to use. Guru Xing Chun might have been the one who was intentionally summoned by Sect Elder Lan Lan, but it is also in line with our wishes. By the looks of it, you should have some clues as well. We will do our best to help you search for his whip that can move stars. Fifthly, what you need to do in the end is to complete all of these and move to the top. Once you become the emperor, Then 7 moons sect will reach the sky in 1 step. The 13 of us will also become great Tao paragons because of Kismet, and I will have hope of becoming a 9th-level Tao divinity realm, Gutai said slowly while staring at Su Ming. Su Ming was silent for a moment before he asked, "Since ancient times, have all the great Tao paragons reached their level like this?" "No, this is a shortcut, or else one Tao sect and Azura clan would not be so passionate about this," Gutai said calmly while looking at Su Ming. "I can do anything else, but it's not as if there are no enchanted treasures I need in 7 Moons sect," Su Ming suddenly said. When he said those words, a smile appeared at the corners of Gutai's lips. "Tell me, I knew that since you chose to come to 7 Moons sect, you must have taken a fancy to something, which is why you hid your identity and wanted to sneak in. I want the pearl in his hand." Su Ming did not hesitate, and neither did he continue hiding it. As he spoke, he looked at Dao Han. At the instant Su Ming spoke, Dao Han frowned slightly. "This isn't a pearl, this is—" Gutai was silent for a while. Clearly, he did not expect that Su Ming would want this. When he lifted his right hand, Dao Han immediately unfurled his palm. The pearl that had always been in his palm flew up and charged towards Gutai. Gutai held it in his hand. "This is a Phala. The Phala I mentioned to you just now has a big one and a small one. This is the Phala I snatched at the peak of my power during the previous battle of Tao verification. This item is known as a reverse spirit pearl, and it was refined into a supreme treasure that will be passed down in 7 Moons sect," Gutai said softly, as if he was thinking about something. "I don't need to have this item for a long period of time. I only want to borrow it," Su Ming said calmly while staring at the pearl in Gutai's hand. "Oh!" Gutai lifted his head. Once he cast Su Ming a glance, he smiled faintly. He lifted his right hand and flung it forward, and the pearl charged towards Su Ming. 7 Moons sect can stake its kismet on you. It's just an external object, so why should I mind giving it to you?" Su Ming lifted his hand and took the pearl. At the instant he touched it, a powerful light immediately erupted from it. As that light changed, there seemed to be a roar coming from within, as if it was cheering. It was a call that caused Su Ming's heart to tremble. Chapter 1537. At the instant the roar rang out and the pearl shone, the gazes of the 13 great sect elders around Su Ming, including Gutai, instantly focused on the pearl. Even Gutai's pupils shrank slightly. Clearly, he did not expect that the pearl would go through such a change when it was in Su Ming's hands. After all, he had personally obtained the pearl, but this sort of thing had never happened before. Su Ming's expression remained as calm as ever. He did not show any joy or anger. Once he held the pearl in his right hand, his divine sense instantly fused into it, and he sensed the illusory soul of Sang Xiang in the world in the pearl. He also sensed that harmonious Morris Alba's soul seemed to have lost its sentience. At that moment, it was the pearl's vessel spirit, but Su Ming did not care about this. What he cared about was the wills of the 4 great true worlds. At the instant he sensed harmonious Morris Alba's soul, he felt as if he had touched his own will. Soon after, the 4 great wills in the pearl that belonged to Su Ming charged towards the divine sense that had fused into the pearl. When they touched each other, the first thing Su Ming sensed was true morning Tao world's will. That will belong to Su Ming to begin with. At that moment, once it fused with his divine sense, a presence that was clearly different from his level of cultivation erupted from Su Ming's body, but was enough to make the expressions of the 13 great sect elders change. That presence was invisible, but it caused Su Ming's long hair and robes to dance, and Gutai's expression to become much more solemn. "This is—" Gutai focused his attention and looked over. He had a vague feeling that the invisible power surrounding Su Ming at that moment was rather familiar. As for the others, they could only sense that invisible power, but they had never heard of it before. However, they could sense that it seemed to contain a power so great that it caused their hearts to tremble. At that moment, Su Ming's will rose again. No one else could hear a soundless roar, but Su Ming felt as if thunder was tumbling about in his heart. He sensed the immortal sect's will. The fusion of the two great wills caused the invisible presence around Su Ming to become even thicker, causing the great sect elders around him to pay even more attention to him. As Su Ming's will grew stronger, the faint feeling of danger immediately caused the great sect elders' expressions to change. This is... When Gutai saw this, his expression suddenly changed drastically. Even his eyes were filled with shock. It had not appeared on him for many years. In fact, even when Sun Mu came, he had not reacted this way. In fact, not only did shock appear on Gutai's face at that moment, he stood up swiftly. There was disbelief and shock in his eyes. At that moment, Su Ming sensed the Emperor of Abyss True World's will from the pearl. When it returned, Su Ming shuddered slightly, and his will erupted with a bang. It had been some time since Su Ming had sensed his will returning to his body. In fact, at that moment, the feeling he had when he was in harmonious Morris Alba appeared in the depths of his heart. It was a feeling that his will was so strong that he could control the universe. The sky and the seventh layer of sky beyond the sky instantly became murky. The ground trembled, and the air in the area looked as if it was shuddering. It tumbled about violently. This scene caused the great sect elders to stand up. They saw Gutai's shock and sensed the terrifying feeling that was rapidly rising from Su Ming's body at that moment. It was as if there was a power that did not belong to ancient Zong around Su Ming, and it was awakening with a roar. This is the presence of a ninth-level Dao god. Gutai's expression changed several times, but in the end he did not say those words. Instead, he mumbled in his heart in disbelief. He was the only person who had fought against the three legendary ninth-level Dao gods and did not die. Hence, his understanding of the ninth-level Dao gods was much greater than that of others. The other great sect elders did not know what the invisible power in Su Ming's body was, but Gutai could sense it clearly. It was the power of a ninth-level Dao god. This isn't Tianxiu Luo's presence. Neither is it the ancient emperor's presence, much less old monster Feng Lai's presence. This is the presence of the fourth ninth-level Dao god that appeared for the first time in ancient Zong. A brilliant light that had never appeared before shone in Gutai's eyes. At that moment, Su Ming sensed Sky Hill's will in the pearl. As it fused with the four great wills, Su Ming opened his eyes, and his will erupted with a bang. It swept through the area, instantly causing the great sect elders' eyes to shine brilliantly, and Gutai became even more certain that he had not made a mistake in his judgment. Su Ming opened his eyes, and his will gradually disappeared. Once it returned to his body, the pearl in his hand became slightly duller. Su Ming did not return it. Since Gutai had already said that he could give him external items, he decided to just flip his right hand over and put the pearl into his storage bag. At that moment, Su Ming's level of cultivation was still at quasi-Dao spirit realm. His appearance had not changed, but in the eyes of the great sect elders, Su Ming seemed to have become a different person. It was a change in his temperament. It was a presence that could not be felt once his heart became stronger. Gutai stared at Su Ming. His eyes grew brighter, and he suddenly laughed loudly. "Third Prince, you've given me a huge surprise. In fact, it can be said that this surprise is something I never expected. This surprise alone is worth it for me to give up everything for you." When Gutai's laughter echoed in the air, Su Ming smiled faintly. "Please call me Su Ming." "Su Ming, Su Ming." "All right, Su Ming. I was originally worried about our chances in the fight for the Phala, but now we'll change our plans. Seven Moons Sect will first prepare for you to sound your Dao spirit voice. Then I will bring you to meet a senior. If this senior acknowledges you, then your chances of success in the fight for the Phala will be much higher. And before we snatch the Phala, I will make arrangements to search for the Space Whip. I will need your help for this. If we can find the Space Whip, then with Seven Moon Sect's full support, you will have 7/10 of a chance of obtaining the Phala. Once you obtain the Phala and step into Dao Immortal Realm, it will be time for you to rise to power in ancient Zong." When Gutai's laughter echoed in the air, The joy on his face could be clearly sensed by all the great sect elders in the area. Su Ming, you don't need to return to the 5th layer of sky beyond the sky. With the reverse spirit pearl, you can go to the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky to train. If you're fast, you'll need half a month. If you're slow, you'll need a month. By then, I will be ready for you to sound your Tao spirit voice and let all of ancient Zong know of your existence. As Gutai laughed, Su Ming wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to him. Then he cast a glance at Su Zhongfan, who was not too far away, and he, too, wrapped his fist in his palm and bowed to him. When he did so, Su Zhongfan's smile grew wider. He nodded repeatedly, and as if he had remembered something, he brought out a jade slip and handed it to Su Ming. This contains some of my epiphanies regarding sounding my Tao spirit voice. Take it and understand it. Su Ming took the jade slip and stared at Su Zhongfan for a moment. Once he put away, he nodded. Once he bowed to him again, he turned around and took a step into the air. In an instant, he disappeared without a trace. When he reappeared, he had already passed through the reverse spirit pearl and stepped into the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky. There was no one there. Without the reverse spirit pearl, even Dao Han would not be able to enter the place, which turned it into Su Ming's cave abode. He did not go anywhere else. Instead, he went to the mountain of the 3rd line in the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky and sat down cross-legged beside the cliff outside the house. Only at that moment did a powerful sparkle appear in his eyes. It was confidence, a confidence Su Ming gained in the unfamiliar ancient Zong after he regained the 4 great wills. The power of his wills was just like Su Ming's ability to reverse time. They were both divine abilities that had never appeared in ancient Zong before. Su Ming could tell a thing or two about it based on the performance of the great sect elders of Seven Moon Sect. Only Sect Elder Gutai seems to have noticed something. Su Ming thought about it for a moment. Since Gutai did not say anything, he must have understood something. Su Ming no longer thought about it, but brought out the jade slip Su Zhongfan had given him. Once he examined it with his divine sense, he gradually closed his eyes and immersed himself in meditation to stabilize his power in Tao's spirit realm. He could sense that his power in Tao's spirit realm was not stable. After all, it had been forcefully increased after he fused with the 7 Lives art and formed his Tao shadow, which was why Su Ming had some sort of epiphany towards sounding his Tao spirit voice. Su Zhongfan's jade slip had recorded quite a lot of it, which allowed Su Ming to gain an even greater understanding towards sounding his Tao spirit voice. In truth, the 1st and 2nd echelons of Tao divinity realm are just Tao bodies. After the 3rd echelon, they are Tao spirits. After the 7th echelon, they turn into paragons, which is why they are known as great Tao paragons. If I want to truly stabilize my Tao spirit realm and turn into a spirit, I need to fuse with the world and become a spirit of the world. Only then can I completely step into Tao's spirit realm. This is a process of turning my Tao body into a Tao spirit. During this process, I need to sound my Tao spirit voice and use my voice to verify my Tao. With my voice, I need to fuse with the world. Su Ming closed his eyes, and his epiphany rose in his head. The 1st is the beginning, the 3rd is prosperity, the 6th is strength, and the 9th is the extreme. By sounding my Tao spirit voice, I can tell a person's potential and potential. Since ancient times, most of the people who have reached Tao spirit realm have sounded from the 1st to the 6th. There are few who have sounded 7, and even fewer who have sounded 8. 9 is rare. All those who have sounded 9 have become great Tao paragons. I wonder how many notes I can sound. Su Ming opened his eyes, and a dark light shone in them. I'll continue tomorrow. Looking at the ranking board of monthly votes is incredibly aggrieving, and I really don't want to look at it anymore, but I'm a jerk. I want to look at it a few times every day, and the more I look, the more aggrieved I feel. Aha! Chapter 1538. With the jade slip in his hand, Su Ming closed his eyes again. In the 6th layer of sky beyond the sky, He began to stabilize his Tao spirit realm and meditate while he waited for 7 Moons sect to sound their Tao spirit voices. Su Ming had never been interested in the so-called princes fighting for the throne in ancient Zong. It did not matter whether it was the fight for the throne or the slaughter. In Su Ming's eyes, they were all methods for him to increase his level of cultivation and the path he would take to possess Xianzong. It did not matter who stood in his way. Su Ming would kill them. He would kill all those who stood in his way and crush all those who stood in his way. He wanted to stand in the sky and look down on the universe. That was why he agreed to Gu Tai's words and carried out the fight for the throne. But in Su Ming's heart, it was not a fight for the throne. It was a path of his own cultivation base and a path to possess Xianzong. No matter how real the world was, there was no ninth summit that belonged to him, no berserkers, and no women who belonged to him. Even if he saw some people here, even if he saw some familiar faces, Su Ming still believed that what he saw did not belong to him. His home had always been the ninth summit. His home had always been Arid Triad. Once the wills of the 4 great true worlds returned, that feeling grew stronger until Su Ming became even more certain of his future path. It became the motivation that allowed him to persevere and continue walking down this path. The ups and downs of those thoughts only existed in the depths of Su Ming's heart. He had already learned not to show even a single hint of it on his face. Only in his closed eyes, which no one else could see, was the madness formed by Su Ming burning his entire life. Time passed, and in the blink of an eye, a month passed. On the morning of a month later, the entire 6th layer of sky beyond the sky looked as if it had been set on fire. It instantly turned bright red, and Gu Tai's ancient voice echoed in the air. Su Ming, the time has come. Sound your Tao spirit voice now. Su Ming's eyes flew open. Not many changes could be seen within them, but the determination in his eyes was incredibly strong at that moment. The eyes were the mouths of the heart, and at that moment, the dark light spreading out from them looked as if a sea of fire had spilled out around him when Su Ming stood up, forming a contrast with the fiery red in the sky. At the instant, Su Ming turned into a long arc and charged into the sky. Booming sounds reverberated in the air, and a gigantic vortex appeared out of nowhere. At the instant Su Ming rushed out of the vortex, he stood in 7 Moons sect. It was as if he was above the 9 heavens. The clouds tumbled about and spread out in all directions. The morning sun shone in the sky, and when he cast his gaze over the area, he could see the entire world. 7 Moons sect beneath him seemed to have become insignificant at that moment. The wind howled and blew at Su Ming's long hair and his long robes, but could not blow away Su Ming's determination to become stronger and stronger. You might say that you sound your Tao spirit voice, but in truth, you are not doing so. Instead, you are letting out a roar that belongs to you in Tao spirit realm. Have that voice completely fuse with the universe and the earth. Have that voice turn into a guide and ripples that will change the world. In the end, your Tao body will transform into a spirit with that long roar. Gu Tai's voice echoed in the air from all directions and lingered for a long time. In truth, you don't need to prepare anything when you sound your Tao spirit voice, and neither do you need to notify the other sects and clans. In the past, when other people sounded their Tao spirit voices, they would only do so in their own sects and clans. There are special forbidden grounds that will prevent their Tao spirit voices from spreading outside, but it's not suitable for you. What we want is for all of ancient Zong to know that the 3rd prince is in 7 Moons sect. That's why we need you to sound your Tao spirit voice in the air. Over the past month, 7 Moons sect has been fully mobilized. We have set up a large number of runes in the area, and all the sect elders have gone out to protect you. The 13 great sect elders are personally serving as garrison. We will not allow anyone or any sect to disturb you. And what I want, Su Ming, is for you to bring out your full power and not hide a single bit of it. You don't have to worry about 7 Moons sect attacking you now or in the future. Don't worry, I have practiced for many eons. 7 Moons sect is one of the 7 sects of ancient Zong, and my promise is his 7 moon sect's promise. I promise that no matter whether it is the present or the future, you will forever be a member of 7 moon sect. No matter where you go, no matter how great your achievements are in the future, you are still a member of 7 moon sect. Similarly, even if you make other choices in the future, you will definitely remember that there is a sect in ancient Zong called 7 moons. You will never forget this July, because that is the July when you rose to prominence. And now, what I need is for you to rise to power in 7 moon sect. Let out your Tao spirit voice so that the entire world and all of ancient Zong will know you. Su Ming, can you do it? There was passion in Gu Tai's voice, along with a hint of excitement. When it echoed in the air, Su Ming fell silent. In it, he slowly lifted his head and stared at the sky. If the fight for the throne is just a part of my life, if even I might be fake, will you and 7 moon sect still be like this? Su Ming asked softly. We have been quiet for too long. Why should we, 7 moon sect, fight against the world with you? We will either live or die. What is there to be afraid of? Gu Tai's laughter echoed in the air. At the instant it shook the sky and earth. The most brilliant light he had shown since he came to ancient Zong shone in Su Ming's eyes. I can do it. After a long while, when Su Ming spoke calmly, his expression was no longer calm. There was already a powerful fighting spirit in his eyes. His life seemed to have been lit on fire at that moment, and his passion became the center of attention in the sky. Tao spirit voice. Once Gu Tai's voice traveled out, astonishing drum beats instantly rose in a circular area of 1 million lis around 7 moon sect. They spread in all directions, rose into the sky, and trembled the ground. The hundreds of thousands of cultivators in 7 moon sect roared almost simultaneously. Tao spirit voice. Su Ming swung his arm and lifted his head in the sky. His cultivation base erupted from his body, and he did not hold back a single bit of it. He let out a long roar at the sky to inform ancient Zong. Roar. That long roar was the strongest sound Su Ming had let out ever since he woke up in ancient Zong. It was a form of madness and eruption from his past. It was the first sound he let out in 7 moon sect and the entire world. At the instant his voice traveled out, the world roared. The tumbling clouds in the sky looked as if they were being roared by a violent gust of wind. They were instantly torn to pieces, and his voice spread out in all directions like rumbling thunder. 1,000 lis, 10,000 lis, 100,000 lis. Powerful ripples rose in the sky of 1 million lis, then 10 million lis, and then 1 million lis. As the ripples distorted, they seemed to turn into Su Ming's face, and he roared at the same time. The ground rumbled loudly, stirring up endless tremors. The mountains trembled, and the lakes roared. All the cultivators in the 1 million lis around 7 moons sect felt their hearts tremble at that instant, no matter what they were doing. Their ears rang, and their hearts were shaken by Su Ming's first Tao spirit voice. This is the first voice. There will be a second, and a third. Su Ming, continue roaring with your Tao spirit voice, and push it to spread through an even larger area. Fill the 7 sects and 12 clans. Once it spreads through all of ancient Zong, it will reach the palace so that all the cultivators in the world can hear your voice. As Gu Tai's low roar echoed in the air, Su Ming's cultivation base instantly boiled. In fact, his soul, his blood, and all his memories also boiled at the same time. All of them tumbled about violently at that instant, turning into an indescribable feeling in Su Ming's heart as his cultivation base erupted at full force. That feeling was a strong desire to roar a second time. It was just as Gu Tai had said. This time, Su Ming wanted the world to know that he wanted to rise to power, and he wanted the world to bear witness to it. This time, the light in Su Ming's eyes shone with a powerful fighting spirit that had not appeared for a long time. In fact, at the instant Su Ming's first Tao spirit voice echoed in the sky of 1 million lis. The 1 million lis in the region seemed to be filled with Su Ming's presence, causing the world to seem to be acknowledging Su Ming's voice, causing Su Ming's power of Tao spirit realm to instantly become much more stable. Then, Su Ming lifted his head. As his cultivation base boiled, he let out his second Tao spirit voice. It was no longer a long roar, but a loud roar that shook the world. Roar! When Su Ming's second Tao spirit voice appeared, not a single cloud could be seen in the sky of 1,000,000 lis. The ground trembled as if there were countless earthen dragons tumbling about. The first Tao spirit voice was still lingering in the air, but the second voice swiftly spread out and covered an area of 1,000,000 lis. When it fused with the other remaining voices, it formed an indescribably shocking and vast sound that spread out in all directions with loud rumbles. 1,000,000 lis, 2,000,000 lis, and when it reached 3,000,000 lis, Su Ming's Tao spirit voice became the only voice in the region of 1,000,000 lis. It brought with it Su Ming's unwillingness to admit defeat, his madness, his determination towards the people in harmonious Morris Alba, and the confusion he had felt when he was in the unfamiliar ancient zone. All of it seemed to have been vented in that roar at that instant. He needed this roar this time. The weather changed, and the ground looked as if it was about to shatter. Lightning retreated. At that moment, as Su Ming's voice echoed in the air, all the lives in the area of 1,000,000 lis sensed a loud roar that came from the bottom of their hearts. With his Tao spirit voice, Su Ming's voice replaced all the sounds in ancient Zong. The ripples in the sky contained his voice, the rumbles on the ground contained his presence, and so did his voice. If my voice can fill all of ancient Zong, then will it travel out of Xian Zhang's body? A brilliant light shone in Su Ming's eyes, and he let out his third Tao spirit voice. The fourth chapter erupted. The monthly votes were here, and Su Ming could not accept defeat. Chapter 1539. 1 was the beginning, 3 was the flourishing, 6 was the strong, and 9 was the extreme. At that moment, when Su Ming let out his third Tao spirit voice, his voice had already reached its flourishing state. As his voice echoed in the air, the madness in his roar reverberated in the world and charged into the area of 300,000,000 lis, where the second Tao spirit voice had spread. Once it fused with the lingering sounds from the first two, Su Ming's third Tao spirit voice swept through the entire area. It continued spreading out. 300,000,000 lis, 400,000,000 lis, 500,000,000 lis. When the first 3 Tao spirit voices overlapped with each other and reached a terrifying 100,000,000 lis, booming sounds rose up in the world. As Su Ming's voice spread out, it was as if he had become the king of the area. 7 Moons sect was located to the west of ancient Zong. At that moment, the area of Su Ming's 3 Tao spirit voices did not cover the entire west, but it had still affected quite a large part of it. Besides 7 Moons sect, there was another sect and 2 clans in the west of ancient Zong. They were 5 Elements sect, Soaring Feathers sect, and Sky River sect. The reputation of these 3 sects was about the same as that of 7 Moons sect, and their strength was almost on par with each other. At the instant Su Ming's 3 Tao spirit voices enveloped the area, the cultivators in the 3 sects immediately sensed it. They woke up from their meditation and opened their eyes from their morning training. Most of the people from the 3 sects had different expressions. Most of the low-level cultivators were at a loss and did not know what had happened. Only those who had been cultivating for years and knew many things, or those who had reached Avacania realm or Tao divinity realm knew what the roar that rumbled in the world meant. When they looked over, they saw that the sky was filled with ripples. Su Ming's divine sense was there, and his face could be vaguely seen in them. The ground trembled, and Su Ming's presence could be sensed. All of this was proof of the Tao spirit voice at that moment. This is someone sounding his Tao spirit voice and fusing it with the sky to transform his Tao body into a Tao spirit. Judging by the direction, it should be 7 Moons sect. But all the cultivators from the 7 sects and 12 clans in ancient Zong who sound their Tao spirit voices will do so in the forbidden grounds of their own sections. No one will know about it, because this Tao spirit voice is incredibly important and cannot be disturbed in the slightest. Seven Moons sect actually allowed this cultivator to sound his Tao spirit voice. They must be planning something. Divine senses spread out, and the cultivators in the three great sects were shocked. At the same time, Su Ming's cultivation base continued spreading out from his body while he was in the sky above Seven Moons sect. He had already reached his limit. With the power of his cultivation base, he could make 3 Tao spirit voices. At that moment, a glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. He could sense that with his current level of cultivation, he could let out another Tao spirit voice. Since ancient times, most of the Tao spirit realm cultivators can only produce Tao spirit voices from 1 to 3. Only a few can exceed 3, and only a few can reach 6. It's rare to find someone who can reach 9, but anyone who has reached 9 and hasn't died has become a great Tao paragon. A glint appeared in Su Ming's eyes. The description of Tao spirit voices in the jade slip Su Zhongfan had given him appeared in his head. At that moment, he sucked in a deep breath. While he was in the sky, his cultivation base circulated to its limit and continued erupting from his body. The third eye at the center of his brow opened, and the 3 Tao bodies in it shone with crystalline light. At the instant they seemed to have been pushed to their limits, Su Ming opened his mouth and let out his 4th Tao spirit voice. Roar! The 4th Tao spirit voice instantly covered an area of 100 million lis. As it traveled further into the distance, it continued tumbling about. Wherever it went, the world would roar. The ripples in the sky and the tremors on the ground seemed to form Su Ming's illusory face. As it roared, it swept through everything. After fusing with the first 3 Tao spirit voices, Su Ming's 4th Tao spirit voice shook the other 3 great sects and clans in the western region of ancient Zong. As it continued spreading out, it finally enveloped the entire western region of ancient Zong, causing every single life form in the western region to hear the roar clearly. But this was clearly not enough to shock all of ancient Zong, as Gu Tai had said. There were quite a number of powerful warriors in Tao spirit realm in ancient Zong who had roared 4 Tao spirit voices in the past, but it was just 4, and it could not cause much of a tremor. At most, it would make the ears of the cultivators in the western region tremble. It was far from enough to shock their hearts. However, at that moment, Su Ming's level of cultivation was almost at its limit. With just the power of his cultivation base, he could no longer continue letting out the 5th Tao spirit voice. After all, it was not a simple roar. It was a voice that could be said to be the voice of life once he fused all his cultivation base, his soul, his life, and everything else together. Only this sort of voice could shake the universe and earth. Only this sort of voice could make the world remember his voice like a brand. At the same time, during the process of remembering his voice, the ripples in the universe could cleanse his Tao body. The tremors on the ground could transform his Tao body, and when it reached its peak, when Su Ming retrieved everything, he could truly step into Tao spirit realm. In truth, even if Su Ming put away the will and aura that had come out of him when he roared with the 4 Tao spirit voices, he could still step into Tao spirit realm, but his future would be limited. It was not the path Su Ming wanted to take. To make himself stronger and to open his eyes when he possessed Xianzong, Su Ming knew that he had to become stronger. His goal was the 9th level of Tao Divinity Realm. His goal was Boundless Tao Realm. As the 4 Tao spirit voices echoed in the air, a strong resolve appeared in Su Ming's eyes. His cultivation base was almost completely drained. The taste of blood appeared in his mouth. As the ripples in the western sky and the ground trembled, his body started trembling. Aside from the difficulty in letting out the Tao spirit voice, since it was a voice that gathered all his life, when he let it out, it was the same as draining his body. Only when he could persevere until he could no longer persevere and withdraw everything from his body could he instantly recover. But before he withdrew his Tao spirit voice, the draining of his strength would become even more severe. The ripples in the world and the changes in the ground would make the draining of his strength even stronger. In truth, this was one of the reasons why it was rare for someone to let out more than 6 Tao spirit voices. My potential is only average. I already knew this when I was in Dark Mountain. After all, even abyss builders have their own potential aside from talent. So with my potential, 4 Tao spirit voices is my limit. A cold sneer appeared at the corners of Su Ming's lips. No anguish could be seen in it, because when harmonious Morris Alba was destroyed, Su Ming no longer felt anguish. When he slaughtered in Saint Defire and Dark Dawn later on, he sank into madness. At that moment, the epiphany of his potential caused a strong sense of refusal to accept it to rise in Su Ming's heart. If I have this much potential, then I will let out even more Tao spirit voices. Because aside from my cultivation base, I also have my will. Su Ming swung his arm, and his true morning Tao's will erupted from his body with a bang. Once it appeared, the invisible power that was clearly different from ancient Zhang's instantly surrounded Su Ming's entire body, causing his hair to fly. Su Ming lifted his head, and with his will, he let out his 5th Tao spirit voice. Roar! At the instant his voice appeared, the western side of ancient Zhang trembled, especially the cultivators from Seven Moons sect. Their faces were filled with excitement. When they looked at Su Ming, they felt as if they had remembered how he had cleared the Tao Divinity Shadow Dissension rune 40 years ago. At the same time, a rare excitement appeared in Gu Tai's eyes. When he stared at Su Ming, he was incredibly certain that he had not made a mistake. This presence was the unique presence of a 9th-level Tao god. When the 5th Tao spirit voice echoed in the air, it instantly filled the entire western side of ancient Zhang and covered all the sects and clans there. At the instant those sects and clans were shaken, Su Ming's Tao spirit voice spread to the central plains of ancient Zhang, to the north and to the south. If anyone stood at a spot in ancient Zhang where they could overlook the entire land, they would definitely be able to see a powerful wave of sound spreading out from the west in an arc. Su Ming's nearly invisible face appeared in that arc. In the yellow sand in the northern region was a Jura clan, which stood tall on the ground. At that moment, Su Ming's Tao spirit voice affected the area. At the same time, the young man sitting on a huge, ferocious statue in the world within a Jura clan opened his eyes. A glint appeared in his eyes, and he instantly lifted his head. Su Ming's Tao spirit voice reached his ears faintly, and it immediately caused the young man's expression to change. At the same time, Di Tian's figure had originally been buried in his right eye, but at the instant the young man's expression changed, Di Tian's figure manifested once more. It's Su Ming. This is Su Ming. Di Tian laughed loudly, and there was a hint of excitement within that laughter, because Su Ming's appearance had caused him to be even more certain of his own thoughts. Everything here was fake. Shut up. The second prince's expression was dark. He lifted his right hand and tapped his right eye. Immediately, the Di Tian in his pupil disappeared with a long string of laughter, but the second prince's expression became even darker. At that moment, the second prince's expression was not the only one that changed. All of Azura clan heard Su Ming's Tao spirit voice. It echoed in the air, the ripples in the sky, and the tremors on the ground caused the expressions of almost all the cultivators in Azura clan to change. The second watch is over, and I'll continue fighting for the third watch. Monthly votes. Are you willing to let this happen? I feel aggrieved from the bottom of my heart. Chapter 1540. When Su Ming's 5th Tao spirit voice fused with the previous 4 voices and turned into a great wave of sound, it covered a small part of the northern region, a small part of the southern region, and the central plains. At that moment, the 5th Tao spirit voice gradually lost its power to spread out and turned into a lingering sound that continued echoing in the air. It was also at that moment that an even greater madness appeared on Su Ming's face while he stood above Seven Moons sect. The 6th voice, blood trickled out of the corners of Su Ming's mouth. There were also traces of blood in his eyes. It was the damage caused by him severely overdrafting his body. The ripples and tremors in the world had also damaged his body and soul. Due to Su Ming's potential, it was impossible for him to let out the fifth Tao spirit voice, which was why the appearance of the voice, just then, seemed to have broken some sort of law in the world, causing Su Ming's body to be drained to a degree that far surpassed that of a normal cultivator who let out the fifth Tao spirit voice. However, all of this also meant that if Su Ming retrieved everything at that moment, his potential would change because he had let out the fifth Tao spirit voice. He had to possess the potential to let out that voice, and if he did not, then the laws of the world in ancient Zong would have to let him have it. This matter might sound abstruse, but it was not difficult to understand the logic behind it. However, Su Ming would have to endure an even greater wretchedness since he had already reached this step. He would absolutely not give up. As his voice echoed in the air, Su Ming's immortal sex will erupted with a bang. His body instantly withered slightly, and most of his life force seemed to have been sucked away. Then he opened his mouth and let out the sixth Tao spirit voice. 1 was the beginning, 3 were the flourishing, and 6 were the strongest. At that moment, when Su Ming let out the sixth Tao spirit voice, he had already stepped into the strongest. When the sixth Tao spirit voice appeared, Gu Tai's voice reached the ears of all the cultivators around Seven Moons Sect. Be on guard. Do not let anyone interfere. The sixth Tao spirit voice is enough to cause a stir. There will definitely be people who will interfere. When Gu Tai's voice echoed in the ears of all the cultivators from Seven Moons Sect, a brilliant light immediately shone in their eyes. They raised their guard and formed an unbreakable wall around the 1,000,000 lease of Seven Moons Sect. When Su Ming let out his sixth Tao spirit voice, the sects and clans in the western region of ancient Zong burst into an uproar. Many people cried out in surprise at the same time. It was because Su Ming had caused a commotion when he shouted his sixth Tao spirit voice. Once the sixth Tao spirit voice fused with the previous 5, it turned into a loud bang that sounded like a sonic boom. The world turned dark, and the ground trembled violently. Su Ming's Tao spirit voice covered most of the northern region, most of the southern region, and most of the central plains. There were 3 sects and 6 clans in this area, not including the western region. At that moment, all the cultivators from the 3 sects and 6 clans were shocked by Su Ming's Tao spirit voice, especially the powerful warriors. They could determine how many times the voice belonged to based on the strength of the Tao spirit voice. Because of that, even more shock was stirred up. This is the 6th Tao spirit voice. He's from Seven Moons Sect. Looks like another sect elder in Tao spirit realm is about to appear in Seven Moons Sect. Judging by how great the Tao spirit voice is, there's a possibility that this person will become a Tao paragon. But could it be that Seven Moons Sect is plotting something? They're not sounding their Tao spirit voices in the forbidden grounds of their sect, but in such an arrogant manner. When Su Ming's 6th Tao spirit voice echoed in the air and lost its power to spread out, Gu Tai's ancient and excited voice traveled into Seven Moons Sect's ears again. Su Ming, if you can sound the 7th voice, you will shock everyone. If you can sound the 8th voice, you will shock all the sects and clans. If you can truly sound the 9th voice, your voice will cover all of ancient Zong, and even the royal capital will hear it. Su Ming's body had withered to the point that he looked like an old man. More blood trickled down the corners of his mouth, and a large amount of red appeared in his eyes. As if he did not hear Gu Tai's voice, Su Ming sucked in a deep breath, and without any hesitation, while Gu Tai's voice was still echoing in the air, he activated his will as the Emperor of Abyss True World. The 7th voice. Su Ming threw his head back and let out his 7th Tao spirit voice. At the instant his voice appeared, it completely drowned out Gu Tai's voice. It was not because Su Ming's level of cultivation had surpassed Gu Tai's, but because the Tao spirit voice he let out had covered nearly 6/10 of ancient Zong and resonated with it. Roar! As Su Ming's voice traveled into the air, his body trembled and withered even more. He was about to turn into a mummy. His hair turned gray, and his blood seemed to be about to dry up. His life force seemed to be about to disappear at that instant. But his seventh Tao spirit voice still roared persistently and spread through the west. It covered all the regions in the north, all the regions in the south, and even the central plains, causing nearly 8/10 of ancient Zong to be filled with Su Ming's roar. Only the royal capital and the central plains seemed to be affected by some sort of mystery, which was why Su Ming's voice could not reach it. Only that place remained as it was. All the buildings, sects, and cultivators in the other areas sensed the madness and determination in Su Ming's seventh Tao spirit voice at that instant. When Su Ming's seventh Tao spirit voice echoed in the air in Azura clan in the northern region, a large number of cultivators immediately stepped into the rune in Azura world. At the instant the rune shone, they appeared in the north of ancient Zong and charged towards the Seven Moons sect. There were quite a number of cultivators among them, but they were not the true trump cards. They were the truly powerful old monsters from Azura clan. Those people had already appeared outside Seven Moons sect. As booming sounds echoed in the air, all the runes outside Seven Moons sect were activated. Gutai watched all of this coldly. The 12 great sect elders beside him had all turned into long arcs and left. The other sect elders also flew out. Anyone in Seven Moons sect can die, but no one can step in and ruin the third prince's Tao spirit voice. Gutai knew clearly that once Su Ming's Tao spirit voice reached a certain level, there would definitely be people who would come to interfere, but there would not be too many of them. Besides Azura clan, only one Tao sect would attack. As for the other sects and clans, they would definitely wait and see. They would also completely reveal the sects and clans where the three princes were. This could also be said to be a show of strength, so that the other sects and clans would consider whether they should join or not. Gutai was fully prepared for this. In this battle, even if a great Tao paragon came, he could forget about breaking all the runes Seven Moons sect activated with all their power within a short period of time. Sun Mu's arrival in the past had been an accident, and it was not as if Gutai had not noticed it. He had just played along with Sun Mu's plan. Right then, he was personally in charge of everything, so this sort of accident would definitely not happen again. As booming sounds echoed in the air, a great battle between Azura clan and Seven Moons sect unfolded beyond Seven Moons sect. There were countless runes around Su Ming. From the distance, figures could be seen continuously approaching him, but they could not break the runes. With Gutai's existence, the place became a ravine that could not be crossed within a short period of time. At that moment, Su Ming's seventh Tao spirit voice had already turned into a lingering echo in the air. As his body trembled, blood flowed out of his eyes, ears, nose, and mouth. The blood was sticky, as if it was the last bit of blood in his body. His face was pale, and his eyes were dull and lifeless. The resolve in his pupils was like a ball of raging fire. 7 voices, huh? There's still the 8th voice. There was madness in Su Ming's bones. Regardless of whether it was when he was in Dark Mountain in the beginning or the slaughter in Saint Defire and Dark Dawn in the end, he had shown it all. It was a madness born from his resolve, and right then, his resolve was to become stronger. Even if he was like an oil lamp that had run out of oil, Su Ming still had sky hills will fuse into his withered body and let out his 8th Tao spirit voice that shocked ancient Zong and all the people's hearts. Roar! When Su Ming roared and the 8th Tao spirit voice appeared, booming sounds shook ancient Zhang's sky, causing the ripples in the sky to be endless. The ground trembled as if it was about to shatter, and all the sects and clans could sense it clearly. At the same time, the 8th Tao spirit voice spread out and completely covered the entire eastern region of ancient Zong, causing the incredibly huge world of ancient Zong to be completely filled by Su Ming's Tao spirit voice during that instant, besides the royal capital. His voice and roars fused with the sky and sank deep into the ground, causing all the ripples in ancient Zhang's sky to spread out as if they wanted to form a complete Su Ming's face. But there seemed to be something lacking. His face looked slightly disorderly and could not take form. The ground trembled, and the booming sounds in the eastern region allowed the one sect and two clans to hear Su Ming's Tao spirit voice clearly. The ancient temple with the three statues in one Tao sect was also enveloped by Su Ming's Tao spirit voice at that moment. It shook so much that it looked as if it was about to collapse, and the cracks on the three statues increased. In one of the cracks was the world of the volcano. The first prince was sitting cross-legged on a huge rock in the magma. As he breathed, the volcano roared, but at that moment, it was instantly drowned out by Su Ming's eighth Tao spirit voice that came from the world outside. This is... The first prince's eyes flew open, and a hint of shock appeared in them. Tao spirit voice. It's the eighth Tao spirit voice. Even if he has the blood of the royal family, it's impossible for him to let out the eighth Tao spirit voice, because even I, who has the purest blood, can only let out the eighth Tao spirit voice. How could he possibly do the same as me? The third chapter was delivered. The demon army, an inverse cultivator. The sword was drawn, but where was the blood? Chapter 1541. That's the eighth voice. Someone in Seven Moons sect actually let out the eighth Tao spirit voice. It's no wonder why Seven Moons sect would sound his Tao spirit voice so arrogantly. 8 voices is already the limit. This means that as long as this person doesn't die, he will definitely become a Tao paragon. But this is a little strange. All the sects and clans in ancient Zhong sensed the astonishing presence in Su Ming's Tao spirit voice. At the same time, they saw Su Ming's face in the ripples in the sky. As the ground trembled, they sensed Su Ming's presence. The fusion of his face and presence might only cause the hearts of normal cultivators to tremble, but to those in Avacania realm, it was a form of shock. To the old monsters in Tao divinity realm, they sensed some sort of signal from his face and presence. Could it be? Could it be? Could it be? The same words echoed in all the sects and clans at that moment, and this was the effect Seven Moons sect wanted. If they could sense that Su Ming was different when they saw him, then the old monsters in the other sects and clans could clearly do the same. At that moment, Su Ming's face and presence spread through most of ancient Zhong without holding anything back when his Tao spirit voice spread through it. Gradually, cries of surprise came from the sects and clans. This is the presence of a royal prince. Seven Moons sect. Seven Moons sect is telling all the sects and clans that they're participating in the fight for the throne. Which prince is this? Most outsiders don't know which sects the 3 princes belong to. Seven Moons sect is the first sect to announce this in such an arrogant manner. Seven Moons sect is acting so crazily. There must be a huge battle beyond Seven Moons sect right now, and the ones participating in it are definitely the other 2 sects and clans who are also participating in the fight for the throne. If we want to know, we'll know once we see it. Such voices could be heard from practically all the 4 sects and 11 clans. Light from runes shone, and figures disappeared. The world beyond Seven Moons sect immediately became incredibly lively. At the same time, Su Ming's will seem to have faded away in the sky above Seven Moons sect, but his body continued floating. He had sounded his Tao spirit voice 4 times with his cultivation base, and his 4 great wills had also sounded it 4 times, reaching a total of 8 Tao spirit voices. But even so, Su Ming still could not accept it. He wanted to sound his 9th voice. He wanted to make all of ancient Zhong be filled with his Tao spirit voice. He wanted to reach his limit, because his goal was not to become a Tao paragon. His future goal was to become a 9th level Tao divinity and reach boundless Tao realm. There was also a desire in the depths of his heart. He wanted to send that voice into Xianzhang's body. With it, he could use it as a counterattack against the various mixed forms that had appeared when Xianzhang possessed him. At that moment, Su Ming's life force had practically disappeared, and the only thing keeping him alive was his will. In silence, he slowly lifted his head and stared at the sky with lifeless eyes. He did not pay any attention to the booming sound around him. He did not look at the battle between Seven Moons Sect and Azura clan, because at that moment, he only had one thought in his heart. He sounded his ninth Tao spirit voice. Su Ming's floating in silence were seen by countless cultivators in the area. Among them were cultivators from Seven Moons Sect, Azura clan, and the other sects and clans who had come from the distance to witness everything. When they saw Su Ming, they immediately noticed that there was something off about him at that moment, because if anyone else did not have the thought to sound his ninth Tao spirit voice, they would have to pull back all their divine sense and undergo the final metamorphosis of their Tao bodies into Tao spirits. However, Su Ming did not do so. Instead, he levitated in midair. This action and his actions immediately made a guess appear in all the people's minds. Could it be that he wants to sound his ninth Tao spirit voice? He might be a prince, but it's impossible for him to sound his ninth Tao spirit voice. The bloodline of the royal family is mostly for the sake of passing down the legacy. It's to pass down the universe and give the royal family the right to become ninth-level Tao divinities. It's for the sake of passing down the legacy. There has never been a prince who could reach the level of a great Tao paragon with his own power. At most, they're just Tao paragons. Could it be that he really wants to sound his ninth voice? If he can do that, then his name will immediately spread far and wide, and all the cultivators in ancient Zong will know about him, because once he sounds his ninth voice, as long as he doesn't die, he will definitely become a great Tao paragon in the future. The first 8 voices can shock people, but they will definitely not stun them. But the ninth voice. At that moment, all the cultivators from the other sects around Seven Moons Sect cried out in surprise, and a loud uproar rose into the sky. In fact, even the cultivators from Azura clan who were fighting against Seven Moons Sect fell back in shock. It was as if compared to Su Ming's actions at that moment, the battle between them was secondary. They wanted to see with their own eyes whether or not this prince was really going to sound the ninth Tao spirit voice, whether or not he would be able to send his voice into the imperial city, whether or not he would be able to make his face clear in the sky, whether or not he would be able to make the rumbling of the land become his voice. This would be a major event that would shake all of ancient Zong. It was especially so for the cultivators from Seven Moons Sect. At that moment, their hearts trembled, and they lifted their heads to look at Su Ming. Excitement appeared on Gu Tai's face. The ninth voice was just a figment of his imagination. He longed for Su Ming to succeed, but he also knew that it was practically impossible. However, at that moment, great anticipation appeared in his eyes. During that instant, the land fell silent. The powerful warriors and old monsters from Azura clan outside the rune, in the sky, around Su Ming gave up on their attacks. Instead, they retreated, and when they looked towards Su Ming, their eyes were filled with respect. They saw Su Ming's disheveled appearance, saw his life force that was like an oil lamp that had run out of oil, and also saw the resolve in his lifeless eyes. Even though they were enemies, the powerful warriors and old monsters still felt respect towards Su Ming. They respected all those who could sacrifice everything for their cultivation. They respected Tao spirit voices and Su Ming's attitude towards cultivation, because it did not matter whether they had sounded their Tao spirit voices in the past or had not reached the right to sound them. All of them felt regret in the depths of their hearts or looked forward to the day when they could sound the ninth voice. This form of respect caused them to give up on attacking. When they moved back, they gave Su Ming a place where he would not be disturbed in the slightest. They allowed him to attempt to sound his ninth Tao spirit voice in that silence. That will be the voice of my life matrix. Su Ming mumbled in the silence. His voice traveled out as the ripples in the sky of ancient Zong and the ground rumbled. It filled all the regions in ancient Zong besides the royal capital. His voice also traveled into the ears of nearly all the cultivators in ancient Zong, causing all the sects and clans in ancient Zong to fall silent. One Tao sect was also silent. The rumbles in the volcano seemed to have disappeared. The first prince lifted his head and stared at the sky. He did not speak. In Azura clan, The second prince on the statue in Azura world had a ferocious expression on his face. He also stared at the sky and did not speak. No matter what the cultivators were doing, all of them stared at the sky quietly. In their ears, Su Ming's words echoed in the world. They were all waiting for the next moment, to either fail or to sound the ninth voice that would shake all of ancient Zong. My life matrix is to move from midwinter to spring, to move from death to life. As Su Ming mumbled, determination burned in his lifeless eyes, along with his madness. At that instant, an illusion appeared in the air above him. It was a huge diamond-shaped rune. It was formed by countless runic symbols. No one could understand them, and there were no divine abilities within them. Only Su Ming knew that each runic symbol represented a part of his memories. They were all his memories from Harmonious Morris Alba, and his life matrix was formed from them. During that instant, snow, autumn leaves, a crimson sun, and life force appeared in his life matrix. When the color of the life matrix turned black, the sky above Seven Moons Sect, which was originally bright, instantly turned dark. The darkness spread through the area, and all of ancient Zhang's sky turned completely dark at that instant. At the instant, darkness enveloped the land, and shadows replaced all light. Su Ming let out his life matrix's voice in the dark, his ninth Tao spirit voice. That voice was no longer a roar, but a soft sigh. It contained Su Ming's memories, his determination, and his desire to become stronger. Everything in his life turned into a sigh at that instant, and it echoed through all of ancient Zong. The sigh caused all the cultivators who heard it to feel as if they were stunned. Complicated expressions appeared on their faces. His voice reverberated in the air, and it instantly filled the royal capital on the Central Plains, which was a place that not even the 8 Tao spirit voices could penetrate, with Su Ming's sigh and the ninth voice that belonged solely to him. The voice continued echoing in ancient Zong. All the sects and clans remained silent, as if they had not woken up from their stupor. At that moment, an old man dressed in a long gray robe stood at the edge of the royal capital. He wore a bamboo hat and held an enchanted staff. He slowly lifted his head and looked at the sky. A smile appeared on his old face. I feel like I've been a clown this month, screaming and screaming, but I refuse to accept it. Begging for demon subscriptions is already enough for me. Since the monthly votes aren't enough, I won't write the 4th chapter today, but the 5th chapter. I'll write the 5th chapter right now. I refuse to believe that I can defy the immortals and fight against the demons, but I can't win against the first place in the monthly votes. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.